giraffe porno magazines? That people would send in necromancy spells like recipes? And that the giraffe porno magazine would just print them? Well, to that I ask, have you ever seen a giraffe porno magazine? Let alone read one?
Hello and welcome to the Kongversation. I'm Hyle Russell.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were going to introduce me. It's Steve from off of Rare Gamer.
Steve, at this time of year, I'm so tired. All right, I don't have the energy to introduce my co-host anymore. They got to do it themselves if I'm going to make it through an entire podcast. Because, you know, if I spend the time to say, and with me on this episode, he works for Rare Gamer, which is known for their top 5 list. Now, and then I keep going, and I keep going, and then I have to explain it even more. And now I'm explaining that I would have to explain it, even though I said I wasn't going to do it. And now I've exerted all the energy that was going to go into the Dracor, and all this really arcane Dinosaur Planet knowledge from the turn of the century. Yeah, I'm old. It's falling out of my head, Steve. I can
only apologize, Hyle.
It's hard enough to kind of keep track of what Saberman Stampede turned into, and don't even get me started on the several iterations of Banjo Pilot. I mean, I could sit here and talk to you about the voxel version all night long, Steve, but it's precarious how much information is in my brain and how close I am to losing some of it, because, you know, it gets dusty. It gets dusty in there, especially when, you know, a lot of the stuff isn't really common knowledge anymore, is it? This era of Rare, aside from, you know, your Banjo-Kazooies and the stuff that was released, the stuff that people played, the stuff that's still getting re-released today, that stuff's out there. Everybody knows about that stuff, but it's this kind of hidden layers of the so-called golden age of Rare, which I don't really like to call it the golden age, you know, because that does a disservice to what they're doing now or what they did before, but you know what I mean. So where am I going with this? I don't know. Steve from Rare Gamer, everyone.
Hoping for a Dinosaur Planet segment somewhere, you know, just to segue us into it, because I'm sure everybody listening, you know, but
yes.
We're getting there.
So, if you can't tell from my beleaguered, shaky voice, it is the holiday season, and I hope everyone is having a safe, happy holiday, no matter what you celebrate or don't celebrate. Respect to you if you just shut yourself in and ride it out. But I wanted to, well, you wanted to, Steve. You approached me, but I thought it was a good idea that we come back around to where the Kongversation Season 9 began. The season of this Kongversation launched in March of this year, and we discussed the Dinosaur Planet leak that was leaked from Forest of Illusion in February of this year. And it was the most comprehensive leak of Dinosaur Planet thus far. It kind of shed some light on some things. It was a build that was kind of in between when they were starting to implement the Star Fox stuff, but it was still fundamentally Dinosaur Planet. And Cameron and I did an episode about it to kick off the season. And now, as the season is starting to wind down, we've got a little bit left in the tank, but it's starting to wind down. I thought it a good idea, as he suggested to me, that we go back around, because apparently a whole bunch of other stuff has come out in the year. And this is, it shows like where I'm plugged in versus maybe where you're plugged in, because I wasn't aware that there was anything more. I was like, story done, move on.
Yeah.
And
there's been quite a bit of discoveries going on from a lot of really clever programmers, a lot of really clever, we call them hackers, you know, the data miners, all that. And wow, I mean, this thing has been blown wide open, and it's bigger than either of us have probably ever expected Dinosaur Planet to ever have been. So
meanwhile, I've just been focused on Donkey Kong leaks and you know, games and movies and theme parks and
yep.
So I can't do it all, Steve. I can't do it all. But that's why it's good that there's more than just DK Vine, the aforementioned Rare Gamer. Steve, why don't you tell us about Rare Gamer? What does Rare Gamer do that DK Vine don't?
We're not crazy.
Oh, fuck.
So we cover just exclusively rare stuff. As long as it came out of Twycross, we will cover it. Whereas Donkey Kong, or I was going to say DKU, DK Vine is very particular about what they cover because it's more about lore in the DKU. It's more about how does Diddy Kong Racing spin off to Banjo, which spins off to Grab by the Ghoulies. And that's the link that you guys take. Whereas Rare Gamer is just, if it came out of Rare, we cover it here. That's all we do. So that's the difference between our sites. You're crazy, and I'm a little less crazy.
I mean, that's accurate. I would say that's accurate. I would define myself as esoterically weird, but crazy is good too. Yep. Not very clinical.
No, it's definitely more quirky. Less of a padded room and more of, a straight jacket on the side.
I think what DK Vine does is, ostensibly we wear ourselves the cloak of a Donkey Kong site, and that brings people in the door. And then we're just like, let me talk to you about Connect Sports Season 2. And then by that point, we've changed the lock and they can't get out. And, whatever. But, it's different avenues, but we kind of lead towards the same thing eventually. I mean, we both cover about, I would say, 70% of the same material, same games. I, of course, have to cover everything Donkey Kong and friends appear in, and everything Royston appears in, and you just keep the focus on Rare. But,
exactly.
But between you at Rare Gamer and Amir and Marky at Rare Thief and everyone here at DK Vine, I think we've got everything basically covered. So it's a good kind of spread. I think.
Yeah, it's a good potpourri of different rare knowledge kind of coming together, and we have crossovers like this, which is really cool.
Yeah. The way the community is kind of in harmony right now. It's not like when we were starting out and RareNet was the big Rare fan site, and we were just like, we need to tear down this institution, man. Because I have no issues with RareNet now, of course, but as a kid, I was like, I want to topple the man, and RareNet was the man. I don't even know what happened to the RareNet guys, but it's like we all have our niche, and so that's cool. And so be sure to follow Steve and friends at Rare Gamer. They're on Twitter. And be sure to follow DK Vine on Twitter. And all visit our respective sites, bookmark us. And if you forget one, we do link to the other. Each of our sites links to the other. So it's all good fun.
It's the beauty of affiliates.
Affiliates. That's you're old. That's an old term. Nobody uses the affiliates branding anymore.
Oh, I'm sorry. The social media savvy guru, or whatever kind of nomenclature you want to use there instead.
Okay. Well, also don't forget, do you have a Patreon, Steve?
I do not, Hyle, because only one of us is making money from this.
Oh, yeah.
And that makes me crazy.
Well, you probably have a day job where I scrounge to make ends meet, but...
I'm an art student. I know what that's like.
So, it's like, Donkey Kong journalist. That's what I'll be. If nobody else does it, surely all the money will come to me.
Let me explain to you what niche funding is, sir.
No, support DK Vine on Patreon, if you don't mind me saying, Steve. Not you. You don't have to do it, Steve. No. I'm just saying, broadly, DK Vine, that's how we stay afloat. We have stayed afloat with the Patreon since we launched the Patreon. There would not be a DK Vine today if it wasn't for the Patreon. So it really does make all the difference between us not existing and us being here right now. So thank you very much to all of our loyal patrons, or if you've been a patron in the past, or if you're thinking of doing it in the future. But one of the perks of being a DK Vine patron is at the $5 and up tier, you can listen in on the Kongversation live as we record it. Most episodes, if it's a special episode, like if we get Kev Bayless and David Wise in here, we won't subject them to the, without a safety net, podcasting that doing a live recording kind of forces you into. But yeah, most episodes we do live stream to our patrons. And just want to give a shout out right now. Plastasm, hello, thanks for listening. And our good friend and part of the Idaho crew, Dustin, is in there. And Dustin says, can I just say it's really great having a podcast that talks about rare stuff. It's my number one favorite thing, and I put on this podcast when I'm working on making stuff. It helps listening to people talk about my favorite stuff. I think it's one of the verses in that Sound of Music song that they've reappropriated as a Christmas song. When they say, talking about rare stuff is one of my favorite things. Right after the something about presents. They mentioned presents once and they're like, bam, that's a Christmas song. Like, fuck you. Fuck you.
It's not very Idlewise, is it?
No. All right, Steve, let's circle back around to Dinosaur Planet. Before it was known as Saria, which was just a post-rare retcon, this is before it was part of the Lilat system.
Yep.
This is before it was part of the shared universe of Star Fox at all. Although it was still kind of a Diddy Kong Racing spinoff. Mm-hmm. The long, complicated history of Dinosaur Planet. I love it.
Yes, this is when it was known as Animus, being where Saber hailed from.
Animus, yeah. So, not from Corneria. Animus. So, we should probably briefly recap what came out in February from the Forest of Illusion leak that we already discussed on the season premiere of this year of the Kongversation, before we get into the new stuff that was uncovered the past 10 months. Yeah.
It's a good place to start. So for anybody unaware, Forest of Illusion, their Twitter channel, they came out with a Swedish version. Well, it wasn't a Swedish version. It was from Sweden, of a Dinosaur Planet build from December 1st of 2000. And when they came out with that, people immediately jumped onto it, so much so that it overloaded their servers. And they had to host it on archive.org, which is where it still lives. And people downloaded the game, and through emulation, through various means, they could get part way into Dinosaur Planet before everything fell out from under them. And before, everyone just tacked that up to, hey, it's a prototype, it's not a finished game, this is kind of what we expect. And a lot of attention then turned away from it. It was more of a novelty at that time to just see it, oh, we're playing it, look, Fox is in here instead of Saber, that's cool. And then interest dropped off. But a very loyal following, and I really want to plug them here because this really couldn't be done without them. It's the Dinosaur Planet Discord, specifically the Dinosaur Planet Community Discord and the Dinosaur Planet Finders Club Discord made this all possible. And there's actually a website they've built together called Dinosaur Plan Net. And the way that works is you say DINOSAURPLA.net. So very clever little ULR there. And they've basically hosted a wiki there, things that you can check out how to play the game, cheats that you'll need to progress, hint, hint, and a lot of different stuff there. And they've actually got a map. I don't know, Hyle, if you've had a chance to check this out when I sent it through Twitter last, but if you go to Dinosaur Planet, same way as I described it before, and then you put /map, you can actually view a map that some genius in the Discord has used to basically, he's ripped all of the models and he's stitched them together as they load in the game. And using your computer, you can press and hold the right mouse button and then use the WASD keys. So you press W to go forward, S to go back, A to go left, D to go right, and then you can use your scroll wheel to change your rate of speed. And you can actually tour around the entirety of all the maps that are currently available in the Dinosaur Planet ROM, just freely, like you just, bird's eye view of it. It's really interesting. I don't know. Hyle, have you gotten a chance to see that?
Briefly, but it's, I don't know. It always feels like I'm breaking and entering when I do that. It feels like I'm loitering on somebody else's property. It's this weird feeling like I'm not supposed to be here. And it's different when it's like a 3D map, like DKC Atlas. There are maps of the 2D Donkey Kong Country stages. That's fine. I feel like I'm just, peeking through somebody's window, but, which is still unethical, but there's degrees of legality here, where if you're a peeping Tom, shame on you. But if you're walking around somebody's bedroom, then you've crossed some serious boundaries. Right. No, it's good that you're drawing the line at peeping through a window is totally cool. No, I'm not saying it's cool, but I'm saying, there's two shady folk, and one of them is peeping through your window, and one of them's sleeping in your bed. Yeah. You're going to have more of a problem with the person in your bed. You're like, you know what? I'll deal with the window person in the morning. I can at least shut the blinds. Right. Yeah. That makes sense. So there's the map there. We also have Amir to thank, of course, from Rare Thief. We both know Amir as mutual friends, and he actually provided a condensed storyline on his Dinosaur Planet page. Yeah. And then from that, we can really follow, like a blueprint, the linear narrative that Dinosaur Planet has in the game, because they used that as they were creating it. They did take some turns. There is some twists throughout, and we will get to that as we go through the chronology of it. But that was extremely helpful in trying to get the true vision and the kind of outline that they had at Rare back in the day when this game was first being developed, because they did follow it very faithfully. There is some areas where Dinosaur Planet veers off from it, and then that comes into Star Fox Adventures. So it really is the missing link from the condensed document, which is called the condensed storyline, to what we finally got in Star Fox Adventures. So yeah, definitely dinosaurplan.net. However you want to say that phonetically, the Discords that you can find on that website there, and Rare Thief as well. We also have Ray's Musics, who's a YouTube channel that is ripping all the Dinosaur Planet music. So if you want to view his channel, you can see all the songs that were never in the game. There are some that did make it over to Star Fox Adventures, but for the most part, all of the unique locations have their own unique music. And you can hear through all that. And of course, shameless plug here, I also have it hosted on my site. It's a much easier ULR rather than the Paul Makachek interview, which I think Hyle can agree was an absolute nightmare when I gave it through last time. But it's raregamer.co.uk/games/dinosaur-planet-music. You put that in, you can get an entire listing of all the available tracks in Dinosaur Planet that we know of. There are still more on Ray's Musics, but the ones that I've found that I can definitely put a location to, that's what you're going to be hearing on mine. So more content on his channel, but there's more chronology with mine currently right now. So you can use the two of those to kind of see how they play with each other. And of course, before we really get into the weeds here, I do want to explain to, because every episode of the Kongversation is somebody's first. Somebody might have discovered, hey, there's a Donkey Kong podcast. And then they're like, wait, why are they talking about early versions of Star Fox Adventures? I thought this was a Donkey Kong podcast. Yeah, I get the vague Rare connection, but they just got done saying they only cover things that are DKU. Why is Dinosaur Planet DKU? Well, a tricky bit of foreshadowing. So basically, Dinosaur Planet started life, and this predates the version we're talking about, the version that's been dug through incessantly through 2021. But it started life as a proposed Timber the Tiger spinoff, essentially. And because it was basically the DKR team. It's like, hey, let's take Timber, who was going to be the lead of Pro-Am 64 before Diddy took it over, and let's give him his own game. And that is where the Tricky connection comes in, where the character of Tricky, who was a boss character in Diddy Kong Racing, was kind of reworked for this game. And through the subsequent iterations that it took, from Timber evolving into Saber, and from Saber becoming Fox McCloud, and it becoming Star Fox Adventures, Tricky somehow persevered until the very end, and his name remained Tricky. And so DK Vine's view has always been, while it's the same Tricky as Diddy Kong Racing, Star Fox Adventures is a prequel. And I guess all of Star Fox is a prequel. But Star Fox Adventures Also, even though it was the last Rare game to release on a Nintendo console, not a Nintendo handheld, but a Nintendo console, even though it was last, it sort of kicked off a loose trilogy of games that followed the storyline and continuity that kicked off with Star Fox Adventures, which is what DK Vine refers to as the Dinosaur Planet trilogy, which is Star Fox Adventure, Star Fox Assault, Star Fox Command. All three feature the character of Crystal, and the first two feature Tricky. Tricky is in Star Fox Assault. He's a little bit older, kind of a middle ground between what we see in Adventures and what we see later in Diddy Kong Racing. Our view is that the games firmly establish, Steve, that Tricky, post-aperoid attack of Dinosaur Planet, aka Sauria, Tricky led an exodus of Earthwalkers and Cloud Runners off Dinosaur Planet to eventually settle on Earth in the Rare Archipelago. And that is why we have dinosaurs in places like Timbers Island, the Isle of Hags, and the Panther Kingdom. So, basically, your hypothesis that we're crazy.
I was going to say, I've seen this same writing actually on a wall of a padded cell in feces. So that is good to know.
But it holds up. Everything holds up. And,
of course.
And if you actually go into it with this knowledge, this idea, this notion that this character of Tricky started life as the Diddy Kong Racing Tricky, but it was either always going to be some sort of prequel or it was going to be some sort of time travel adventure. I mean, time travel was originally, I think, the pitch for the Timber game. Mm-hmm. And anyway, so long story short, the spirit of Tricky remained the same even if the world around him shifted. And it actually works quite lovingly, that you can view Star Fox Adventures as a Diddy Kong Racing prequel. And then even stuff later on, like Fox and Diddy Kong teaming up in the Subspace Emissary in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, it just feels poetic. It feels apropos. And anyway, that's why Star Fox Adventures is DKU, and that's why Dinosaur Planet was going to be DKU before it was radically altered. And in fact, you know, DK Vine, we launched in 1999, so we were right there when Dinosaur Planet was rumored, was announced, and I said on the season premiere that it wasn't the area of Rare and the like upcoming releases that I was most invested in. I was not the staffer who was all about Dinosaur Planet, but I was excited for it all the same. Of course I was, but it's like, you know, if you were running an MCU website, right? There would be some properties you would be all about. Like, I can't wait for the new Doctor Strange movie, but then you might not be that into She-Hulk or you know, something else. But you're still excited for it because you're a fan and you want to be delighted, you want to be surprised. So that's the way I felt about Dinosaur Planet. And the twists and turns along the way when it became a Star Fox game. After heavy rumors that it was being reworked into a Star Fox game, mind you, that proved to be a bit of an existential nightmare for some of the staff on DK Vine. Like, this game was like catnip to the likes of Ozzy Ben Cosmina. And then the idea that it wasn't going to be DKU after all, that it was going to be reworked into a Star Fox game. Oh, it provided some dread. It provided some dread. But then we saw E3 2001, the fabled E3 2001, the trailer that revealed, yes, it was a Star Fox game, but Tricky was still in it. So anyway.
And it was like all your Christmases would come at once.
Well, that was also the E3 that gave us Donkey Kong Racing and Diddy Kong Pilot and Coconut Crackers and Banjo-Kazooie Grunny's Revenge. So, yeah, that was probably the best Christmas ever in May. But
yeah.
Also, before we get started, I just want to reiterate, I love Star Fox Adventures. I am a huge Star Fox Adventures apologist, and I really have never mourned Dinosaur Planet because I am perfectly content with what we got with Star Fox Adventures, although I'm sure we will be getting into that closer towards the end.
I wonder if you will change your mind by the end of this. Because
You know
I
what?
was also a Star Fox Adventures apologist until I saw all the potential of this one. And yeah, it's going to be interesting as we go through this episode.
You know what? I think it'll be a nice saucy chat we'll have.
Absolutely. Get that wah-wah pedal going. So we have some things I'm just going to tease because they don't really fall in the chronology of it, but they are amazing discoveries found by the team that will kind of whet your palate for what's in the future. So there are 7 cut areas in Dinosaur Planet that never made it into Star Fox Adventures. And there are areas that are actually elaborated on in Dinosaur Planet that are cut back or scaled back in Star Fox Adventures, but there are in fact 7 areas that were planned, that were rendered, that were all good to go, and they decided, no, let's take them out of Star Fox Adventures. So there is that. It's 13 areas in Star Fox Adventures, 20 in Dinosaur Planet. So we'll get to tour those 7 areas and figure out what that's all about. For the Saber fans out there, Saber is intact. We can play as Saber instead of Fox.
For the way you said it, for the Saber fans out there, like it's
Hyle, there are 2 very vocal Saber fans out there. I'll have you know he's very popular in the minority's minority.
And he's intact. Like, don't worry, he hasn't been dissected. Don't worry, he hasn't been run over by a car. Saber is intact.
Yeah. Exactly. Oh, and also, we had a user named Hugo that was able to go through the game's files, and he found some storyboard art. It's mostly the Cloud Runner Fortress stuff, but there's these basically pages of storyboards that were really compressed. I think they were about like 200 or 300 pixels by 300 pixels. And he ended up using some AI to blow them up, and you can still read them. They're legible, but it's really interesting to see that kind of still in the game. They're also on the wiki if you want to visit that. Listeners, because it's really cool seeing the progression of how they started this whole thing. So there's 92 of them, which is crazy. And then, of course, the Rare Thief condensed storyline matches up perfectly. So if you view that, and as Hyle and I are going to read, you'll see exactly how close it is. And there are some veering off, but it is interesting to see how the vision of Dinosaur Planet started from this document and how it really carried over into the final game. And of course, was scaled back into Star Fox Adventures. So there's some wet teases to kind of get your palate going.
My palate is wetted.
All right, so here's what we're going to start with, I guess, the charted territory. So if you were on the internet I guess it would have been last year, around February 20th or so, and you very quickly downloaded Dinosaur Planet and played it illegally, played through the leak, you would have gotten through charted territory, which take up the first 2 acts. 1 act belongs to Crystal, 1 act belongs to Saber. So we have the condensed storyline here. It's being hosted on my site, but Hyle, do you want to read Crystal Act 1?
Crystal Act 1. Okay. So, and this is you typed this up, or is this?
No, this is an official document from Rare. This is the developer, it's almost a pitch that they created for approval of Dinosaur Planet.
Oh my god.
So this is yes, exactly.
Okay. All right. Crystal Act 1. Through a heavy storm, Crystal rides the back of a soldier from the Cloud Runner tribe. They are flying through the air when out of the dark, storm clouds around them appears. Wait. They are flying through the air when out of the dark storm clouds around them appears a flying galleon. All right, that poorly constructed, but whatever.
Syntax.
Yes. Blasting the cannons and landing on the galleon, Crystal is about to rescue the princess when a door bursts open and General Scales approaches her. He is the leader of the Sharpclaw tribe and has waited for this opportunity to take control of Dinosaur Planet for many years. Crystal attempts to get to the princess, but Scales knocks her to the ground. But whilst he stands there gloating, lightning strikes, throwing him off the side of the galleon. 2 exclamation marks, because it's not just exciting, it's doubly exciting. It's double dash level excitement, folks. After defeating Scales and rescuing Princess Kite, The galleon docks at Warlock Mountain. Crystal heads off to find Randorn. She finds him in ill health. He mumbles something about, "This is not Scales' doing. There is someone else? He's very afraid." I'm sorry. I know this is just a pitch, right? But just the perfunctory, "He's very afraid." Made me chuckle. Randorn then tells her about a race called the Chromozoa, who ruled the universe millions of years ago. During a great battle, they were destroyed, and from this destruction arose the great Chimeria dragon, the god of the dinosaurs. This is sounding like Scientology now. The dragon had created the dinosaurs, and since that day, life had been good. Oh yeah. But recently, the King Earthwalker was beginning to suspect that the ancient texts were hiding something. Maybe the history of the planet was wrong. He gives her his spell book and tells her to go to a place called Discovery Falls. There, the dinosaurs had uncovered a mysterious shrine that may hold the answers that the King Earthwalker had been looking for. As she returns to the galleon, General Scales is waiting for her. Somehow he had survived the lightning strike and was still alive. He commands the galleon to head off into the sky, leaving her stranded and having to rescue the princess again. She discovers a hidden warp room, and finds herself standing in front of a huge stone creature. His name is Rubble. He is one of the Swapstone twins. Rubble informs her that he is able to swap the player between the main characters of Saber and Crystal. With a wave of his hands, we now join Saber's adventure. I'm waving my hands right now. I'm giving jazz hands. You can't see it, but they're there.
Okay, so that is Crystal Act 1. And for generally about 90% of that is exactly how it appears in Dinosaur Planet.
Yeah.
I think you've played through the initial portion with Crystal, yeah?
Cameron and I both played through that. And you know, it's worth pointing out that what is referred to as Warlock Mountain is what we know as Chromozoa Palace in Star Fox Adventures.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing, too, is with Star Fox Adventures, it almost follows it narratively as well. But there's no swapping point, of course, because there's no reason to swap. So when you end off with Crystal, she's frozen in a crystal, which, you know, namesake and everything. And then you go on from there as Fox. So that's the only point in swapping between the two. And the rest of the game is just Fox on his own solo adventure. And the whole impetus of his journey is you're trying to rescue Crystal. Whereas in the original,
you're trying to, you know, put the planet back together before it explodes.
Yeah, there's that whole minor plot point too. Yeah. So that's the gist of it. And with Star Fox Adventures, so you start off with the galleon, exactly the same. You land on it. You get the General Scales confrontation. You go to Warlock Mountain, which in Star Fox Adventures is called Chromozoa Palace, and then finally you arrive back at Swapstone Circle, which is one kind of linear element that wasn't followed in Star Fox Adventures because they ended up stopping the quest there and going, hey, meanwhile on, you know, in the Lilat system, here's Fox and he's doing this. So
on the Great Fox, And
one thing I do want to point out, it seems like they didn't know what to do with General Scales and the whole lightning strike, because we have evidence throughout that he appears on it, and the original says that he approaches her with his plan like gloating, and lightning strikes and he's thrown off the side. And I believe that the different elements they've created is that he gets struck by lightning and the belt warps him away. And there was another one where the lightning strikes him and he ends up falling off and also warping. So they had some kind of changes there, as minimal as they were. But what we ended, I'm trying to remember in Star Fox Adventures if something similar happened, if what they finally decided on it. Do you recall?
He throws Crystal off the galleon, and then the Cloud Runner catches her, and then you kind of go away to Chromozoa Palace, I believe.
Oh, okay. So he's not struck by lightning?
If he is, it's not memorable.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say, because even I can't remember it, and yeah,
It's been a few years since I played Star Fox Adventures Mind, so it's but yeah, I mean it's it seems like they had to keep like they really didn't know narratively how to wrap that up. Like, how do you get out of that confrontation with General Scales at the beginning of the game?
Yeah,
where it's more of a taste. A teaser than anything in Star Fox Adventures, but then he doesn't come back again because obviously Crystal gets attacked by Andross. We don't know it at the time, but it's Andross who is the
spoilers
manipulator behind everything. Well, the ghost of Andross who's trying. Ultimately, Andross's plan in Star Fox Adventures is Palpatine's plan in Rise of Skywalker. He's trying to revive himself, resurrect himself after his death in Star Fox 64, and he's using the political situation on Dinosaur Planet and the power of the Chromozoa, inadvertently the power of the Chromozoa, to revive himself, and that's basically the gist of Star Fox Adventures. And so I think it's cleaner in SFA than it is here. But I wanted to point out though that the swap stones, of course, because there is no swapping in Star Fox Adventures, the character just becomes the warp stone, and he can warp you back to Chromozoa Palace or Ice Mountain, but that's all he does really.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the original Crystal Act. We can see it's pretty replicated to the game. So I'm just going to read off Saber's here. So when we swap from Crystal to Saber, here's what happens. Saber discovers that Prince Tricky is about to be imprisoned at the top of Ice Mountain. He attempts to rescue him, but the prince has ideas of his own and runs off with 2 sharp claws in quick pursuit. Saber jumps aboard a jet bike and chases after them down the frozen slopes. He eventually catches up with the young prince, and together they head off through the forest of the northern wastes. This cold land is home to the Snowhorn tribe. The prince reveals that he is able to help Saber by using his sidekick commands. He can dig up items buried under the ground. He can use his flame breath to set fire to things. He can also get them both into lots of trouble, which he does regularly. Saber's task is to get Tricky back to his parents. This takes them through Swapstone Hollow. Here they find Tricky's mother, the Queen Earthwalker, has been badly injured. After helping her, he tells them of General Scales' plan on how they can stop him. The general has taken control of 2 Force Point temples, so that stays the same in Star Fox Adventures.
Yeah.
These buildings are used to extract magic energy from deep within the core of the planet, which the dinosaurs then use to power their world. He wishes to use this energy for evil. To stop him, Saber and Crystal must find 6 spell stones and place them inside the temples. This will shut down the power and save their world. So, you've played, obviously, through Saber's quest as well, and that's exactly what happens. You start on the top, you do the Ice Mountain race, which is in Star Fox Adventures. And
It's almost identical, yeah.
Yeah, and then you get down to the base of operations, which in Star Fox Adventures is Thorntail Hollow instead of Swapstone Hollow.
Yeah.
And it follows very closely. In fact, one of the other discoveries the team made on the Discord is they found an early version of Ice Mountain. So it's in pieces, and they've stitched them together, and there's a whole separate track that it's very early on, but you go through like a cabin, and then you use the same cabin on an alternate route to go off the roof like a ramp. So that's one of the development features that they ended up discovering in the game. So they're really paying close attention to a lot of the stuff going through. But that's almost exactly what happens in Star Fox Adventures, including kicking around the ball for Tricky, the whole dynamic there. But that's as far as you can really get in the original version of the game, because once you swap back to Crystal to do her second act, that's when things start going awry if you've played through the game. And that's where most people stop. They view these first 2 acts, and then they which is unfortunate because they're essentially tutorial levels. They just get you your first little taste of it. And unfortunately, that's when the game kind of breaks down. But luckily,
I was honestly fine. I was honestly fine with the game kind of falling apart at that point because, like as interesting as this stuff is to me, I'm very much of the mindset, and this is just the way I'm wired. I know I'm the odd person here, or as you so delightfully put it, something about a straitjacket, but I view this as like, well, this isn't my Fox. This is my Crystal. This is my Tricky. This isn't my Dinosaur Planet. This is like weird variants that I'm not familiar with. And it's the same reason why I never really had much interest of like playing games before release. Like when I go to E3, that's not my primary motivating drive, is to play a game pre-release. It's weird to me because it's not canon yet. It's just this idea, and I don't have any emotional attachment to it because it's not an actual building block in that shared universe. So for me, it's like it scratches the itch of, oh, okay, I've played the original Dinosaur Planet. I'm good now. I don't really need to see anything else. And I thought that was going to be it, but lo and behold, there's more.
So do you want to read Crystal Act 2?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Wait, Crystal Act 2 isn't just her imprisoned in a crystal?
No, she actually has more to do, surprisingly enough.
What the hell? All right.
That's a change.
Meanwhile, Crystal Act 2. I have to set the stage. Meanwhile, Crystal had made her way to a place called Cape Claw. It was here that the Sharp Claws had made their base, and where she was sure to find Princess Kite. After rescuing a strange little dinosaur called a Lightfoot, she rescues the princess, and together they head off to Discovery Falls as Randorn had wished. Before they get there, Crystal is captured by the Lightfoot tribe. They believe her to be a Sharpclaw collaborator, but when she comes to their aid, they reward her by opening the route to Discovery Falls. In a time before the dinosaurs, Discovery Falls was regarded a sacred place. Before the war began, the Earthwalkers had found a strange shrine, which was covered in an unusual form of ancient text. Randorn thought that if they could find a way into the shrine, it may give them some clue as to what exactly Scales was up to. Crystal and Kite eventually open the shrine door and venture inside. Here they must complete a Chromozoa test, which ends with Crystal being possessed by a spirit. Woohoo! The spirit commands her to return to Warlock Mountain. They have uncovered the first Chromozoa shrine. But who exactly are the Chromozoa?
So that's quite a bit different than what we experience in Star Fox Adventures. Because with Star Fox Adventures, it goes from Thorntail Hollow immediately to Ice Mountain when you start doing Dark Ice Mines. It's not until much later that Cape Claw comes into effect. And as we go through the later acts, it becomes clear how different Dinosaur Planet's Cape Claw is to Star Fox Adventures' Cape Claw. And in fact, the analogy that I ended up using with it is if you imagine Cape Claw being a hotel, Dinosaur Planet is you can explore every room of that hotel. You can explore every nook and cranny of it. Star Fox Adventures Cape Claw is the reception desk, and that's it. It was so scaled back. It's one of the most cut features and areas in the game, and there's so much potential there. So it does become a sticking point to me of like, I wish it was there. I know why they couldn't do it. I know the development schedule was hectic at that point. They needed to get it out. But when you see the true potential of it and what was truly envisioned, it's, it makes me sad. I
would imagine that's the case though with most games. Like you could look at the blueprints for Banjo-Kazooie and be sad.
Yeah.
If you had the full picture, which we very rarely do. So it's, I think, eye of the beholder. Like,
yeah.
I get it. I love Cape Claw in Star Fox Adventures. I love the music. I love the vibe, the atmosphere. I mean, it's a tropical beach. Of course I love it. But it's funny though, like reading over this and I see like little bits of DNA that have been retained. Yep. Like Cape Claw is still a Sharp Claw base. They've got the little infrastructure set up there, and the stuff with the intersection with the Lightfoot tribe,
yep.
And all of that, and a lot of that plays out the same, only with Fox, of course, instead of Crystal. But as far as like getting captured and the Lightfoots being hostile until they aren't, and all of that, that's it's been switched around, the order's changed, but it's still there.
So let me tell you why this area, because up to this point we could play it. Why can't we play through Act 2? What is wrong with it specifically? Well, in Cape Claw, you're meant to rescue Kite, as it says here. The problem with it is there's a guard claw that is posted at the front of that poison gas room, which is similar in Star Fox Adventures. And the way that you get through that room is by bribing him, as a bribe claw. So you give him a golden nugget. He takes the nugget, he pockets it, he walks out of the way, allowing you to progress. You would then go deeper into the base, find Kite, unlock her cage, do a little bit of a puzzle solving with this totem sort of arrangement, and then you'd be able to leave with her. Here's the issue that we ran into as we first got into it. The golden nugget is located in a cave underneath the bribe claw, which it is in Star Fox Adventures as well. There's still an area there. The problem with that is that everything you can imagine will crash the game. And I'll go through each one really briefly here. So what you're supposed to do is if you go into the water in Dinosaur Planet around Cape Claw, you get swept into the undertow and it immediately kills you. So it's a slap on the wrist, don't do that. So you go, okay, how am I going to get to this cave that's halfway into the water? If you climb up this kind of opposite platform, it's right near the guard claw, or the bribe claw rather, you climb up and there's a log kind of precariously perched on the side of a hill.
Wait, there's a Lord of Games?
Exactly. He's there and he's like, I'm not supposed to be here. No, it's a tree log. You know what I'm talking about. Hyle, Jesus.
I know, I'm just kidding. I have to do it.
I know. Oh, well, funny enough, I'll give you a little insight here, too. So you push off the log, and it falls into the water. It pans up, and Crystal gives a really off-model smile, and that's become a meme within the community. Like, we took her face doing that weird smile, and we've made that into an emoticon. So you can send that to each other. You can use that to react. It's really funny. But also, the clever hackers decided, hey, we can actually change the log model into a dinosaur. So it looks like Crystal's committing murder and then smiling about it. So there is little like in jokes and exactly. So basically you shove the log into the water and then you get on top of the log, you paddle out to the cave, you're meant to pick up the nugget, which you bring back and give to him. Here's the issues that we had with it. As soon as you kick the log into the water and you jump on it, Crystal's model glitches into the log, it's not rendered properly, and the game crashes. So we immediately had people trying to fix that up. So they did. And now you can actually kind of swim on the log, not to the point it fixes the model, of course, but so the game doesn't crash. So you're still merging with the log, but you can swim out to the cave. When you get in the cave, the game crashes because it's an unstable area. So people were figuring out ways to like kind of turn the camera a bit to like make it into the cave. So we finally got that done. We see the nugget. We get off the log. We get onto the sand. We pick it up. And as soon as you pick up the log, it crashes the game. And the problem with picking up the object, with the log and swimming out, there's ways around it. There are ways that you can kind of finagle the game to do what you want to do. But picking up an item that crashes, that's a cutscene. You can't get around a cutscene. So everybody was going, this is a hard crash. There is no way to solve this. We're going to really have to research and figure out a way to do it.
Did anybody try putting in an N64 expansion pack?
Unfortunately, no, the DK64 solution wasn't any help to us in this one because Dinosaur Planet, by virtue, does have it when it starts up anyway. So unfortunately, that stymied us. But some clever person had the idea that, hey, the reason that the game crashes is you pick up this golden nugget and the game tries to load the image of the golden nugget, which doesn't exist. So it turns into a loop on itself, and that's what makes it crash. So we know that, for instance, on Scales' Galleon, if you pick up a gem, it'll show the gem because it knows what the gem looks like. So if we change the value ID of that nugget into a gem, we can have the game think that you've picked up a gem, but in actuality, it will store the nugget. So that's immediately somebody came out with a Game Shark code, and it worked perfectly. We all of a sudden, we could get the gem or the gold nugget. It was in the inventory. Now we just had to get back. So we turn around, we get on the log, we go to exit the cave, and the game crashes. So we try again using the same camera setup. Now we're out of the cave. We're swimming on the log. We're approaching the guard claw or the bribe claw. We give him the nugget. He takes it. He steps out of the way. We go, yes, we're finally making progress. This 5-minute little detour that was supposed to take, a little bit of time is now a day and a half work to try and get it, to cooperate. We step into the poison room. We start moving the blocks and the game crashes because that room is very unstable. So now we have more people that are weighing in on the poison room. And we found out, hey, if you actually, instead of pulling the log, or pulling the block rather, if you step around the other side and push it on the last one, it's actually more stable for some reason. You know, that's the genius about these kind of solutions, is that everybody tries everything, and it's the idea that if you have hundreds of people doing that, eventually you'll have a monkey that writes Shakespeare, right? Like, you will find a solution that works.
Hey, well, don't bring monkeys into this.
Well, why not? We're all monkeys, man. We're evolving.
I'm just saying, monkeys are smart. Don't.
Of course. And one of them wrote Shakespeare, and that's what I'm saying, you know? It's the way that it works. So we finally got access into further Cape Claw, which was brilliant to watch that work out. And it was days and days of effort. So we finally get to Kite's cage. We go to pick up the key, crashes again. Same thing. So we go, okay, how are we meant to get this key then into the inventory? Well, we just solved that before. So, okay, game, turn key value into gem value. That works as well. Perfect. We're not stymied anymore. So we unlock our cage. We have our reunion. We solve the puzzle. We leave the area with Kite on our shoulder. We now have the commands. So it's brilliant seeing, like, we're used to playing with Tricky, right? So to play with this flying character that we can also command is really neat. And our AI is a little dodgy, but it does work as intended. The interesting thing too is that people were trying to kind of illegitimately get Kite out of her cage, and it was possible. And I actually promoted this on my site, which was kind of funny. I ended up deleting it because I'm like, oh, that will absolutely strip your game. But we found out by going close to the cage and accessing her commands will allow you to kind of get her out of the cage and then on your back, so you can just leave with her. But by doing that, you just go back to Swapstone Hollow and nothing else happens, and you're stuck. Right? Because there's no cutscene that plays when you freed the Lightfoot. But if you can get Kite out legitimately, the second that you walk into the alley that leads back to Swapstone Hollow, you get that Lightfoot cutscene where, you know, you see the baby, and it's exactly how it plays out in Star Fox Adventures, where you get ambushed. But there's more context now because it's Kite that's doing the saving rather than just a random member of her tribe, right?
That does make more sense, yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of things that don't make sense, though, so you get, after you free Kite, you're using her flame command as you're trying to battle against the Lightfoot. So it's interesting because you can your camera basically will automatically turn to an approaching member of the Lightfoot who has a spear, and he's edging closer, and then you use the flame command to get him away. So if you do that a few times, you basically get the respect of the team. So it's kind of funny because the original document says that the Lightfoot is basically not, like, you're not battling them, you do a favor for them, right? If I'm trying to find Crystal Act 2 here. Yeah, she comes to their aid and they reward her. And it's like, well, no, there wasn't an aid there. There was no discussion. You fought them, and then they figured, oh, we're outnumbered. Let's have a truce. And that's what they end up doing. And funny enough, actually, the Lightfoot Chief rather, is voiced by Chris Seaver, and it's his typical it ebbs of Conker's Bad Fur Day, you know, like, sure. You can definitely, it's that voice that he does there, like that. Oh, I'm the Light Chief, you know, and it's perfect. It sounds exactly like that, and you're like, that's Chris Seaver, you know. So yeah, he comes back to Swapstone Hollow with you, and he goes up to a pool of water. Or actually, I should preface this. You use Kite's flame command to light the torches around Swapstone Hollow, and after doing that, the Lightfoot Chief visits you and says, I'm going to open up the way to Discovery Falls. So he jumps into this little pond, and I don't know if the intention is that there's a plug on the bottom or whether he drinks all the water and it has no effect, but he dives into the pool, and then he comes back, and the water just starts draining out. And it reveals a little hole in the wall that you can now access and get through. And funny enough, actually, people were already trying to get to this hole because they found out if you're Crystal and you fall off a ledge while swinging your staff, you can actually walk underwater by swinging your staff still. So it's one of those bugs on the N64 that they probably would have fixed by the time of development, but everybody was basically exploring through Cape Claw using that method for the longest time. But so now you're in Discovery Falls after legitimately doing it, and you've crawled through this little tunnel, and you have to basically, there's a whole bunch of rope swings and stuff over the canyon, so that you basically have to climb up, and you can fight these kind of, they're almost like the baddies in DKC2 that are on the ropes, right? That kind of go up and down, except now they're
Steve, hold on. Steve of raregamer.co.uk. You just seriously tried breeze past that. They're like the baddies, on the ropes in DKC2.
Yeah.
What are their names?
I'll tell you in a second while I'm not Googling.
No.
Waiting.
Klinger. You're done.
All
You're
right.
done. You're done here. I'm just saying, this is why there needs to be a DK vine. Smearing our poop on the walls or whatever you say we do. Because we can tell you it's Klinger right off the bat. All right. Sorry. All right.
Fine. So fair enough. So yes, like clingers, they are moving across the water, right? And you have to take them out and then use their same ropes to get across. Once you do that, you get to your first Chromozoa test, which in this case, if I have this written down somewhere, the test of combat. So you're fighting against some sharp claw enemies. You defeat them. You get your very first spirit. You're taken back to Warlock Mountain, where you have a brief little exchange with Randorn yet again, and then we swap back to Saber's adventure. So out of all of that, we ended up discovering, hey, here's a new act in Cape Claw, never before seen, that we can now access after hacking through the game and trying to find solutions, which the team did. So that's uncharted territory that's since now been fully restored. If you use the codes that we've provided on the site, you can play through that sequence as intended as well. It works flawlessly. It's brilliant. So
Wow.
that'll take us to Saber Act 2. Do you want to read Saber Act 2? Since I've been talking for a little bit.
Yeah, I'll give you a little break there while you
perfect.
can bone up on your DKC2 baddies.
I'll read all the enemies now. There's Clobber, there's Klinger. I'm so sorry, Hyle. There's
If I talk slow
Cannon,
enough, you can watch the whole
Cutlass.
character parade. Yeah. All right. Returning to Northern Waste, which I just to clarify for those keeping track at home, Northern Waste is Snowhorn Waste in Star Fox Adventures. But it's just called Northern Waste here. Returning to Northern Waste, they find a Snowhorn imprisoned under a layer of ice. After helping him, he reveals that he is a Spellstone Guardian, one of a special group of dinosaurs formed millions of years ago by the Chimeria Dragon. Each Guardian was given a Spellstone to protect, and this secret was passed down from generation to generation. If the planet were ever in trouble, the Guardians would take the stones and stop the energy extraction. General Scales learnt the Guardian's secret, but the Spellstone had been hidden deep within dark ice mines. When the Guardian had refused to reveal its exact location, the General threatened to destroy his whole tribe. The Guardian still refused, but his daughter stepped forward to help Scales. She held the safety of her tribe above the importance of her father's Spellstone, kind of like Doctor Strange did when he gave the Time Stone to Thanos. Am I right? Keeping it relevant for the modern generations here. Saber and Tricky must head into the mines to find a Spellstone before Scales. Back in Dark Ice Mines, Saber and Tricky, under the Guardian's daughter's instruction, had reached the bottom of the mine. Somewhere in a hidden chamber, they will find the Spellstone. Tricky uses his Find command and digs a hole through into this secret place. Here they find a huge frozen waterfall. Within the ice, they can see the Spellstone, though it appears to be sitting on a huge hand, 2 exclamation marks, double dash style. Melting the ice awakens a terrifying monster. He grasps the Spellstone, but before chasing our heroes, he decides to eat it. After a long battle, which ends inside the monster's stomach, the Spellstone is collected. Quickly, they return to the Guardian, as only he has the power to activate a Spellstone. They then head back to Swapstone Hollow to attempt to find the Volcano Force Point. Within Swapstone Hollow live the Thorntail tribe. These friendly dinosaurs guide them downriver to Diamond Bay. After helping out a distressed pointback. Fuck is a pointback? They are given a map which reveals not only the entrance to the Volcano Force Point, but another hidden Chromozoa shrine. Entering the Force Point Temple, the first spellstone is placed. They are now one step nearer to saving the planet. So, Steve, I was gonna say, like, this is sounding very familiar. Like I was like, the stuff with the Snowhorn, was it Belinda Tay is the daughter?
Yeah, Belinda,
yeah, and the whole dynamic there, that made it intact in the Star Fox Adventures. They have to go to Dark Ice Mines. The difference being, Dark Ice Mines is, rather than an adjacent area to Snowhorn Waste, or the Northern Waste here, Star Fox Adventures has the element of the planet breaking apart. And so you have to fly to Dark Ice Mines in your R-Wing. And that's not so much a thing here.
No. So in Dinosaur Planet, all the lands, well, they're separated in the fact that you have crystal areas and you have saber areas.
Yeah.
But all of those areas are interconnected. There's no loading point where it'll take you off somewhere else. Everything is loaded within one area, which is extremely impressive for the N64. And they do very clever culling techniques. So obviously they'll unload some areas when you leave them and stuff like that. But the idea that there's no point where you go off to some offshoot map. It's all interconnected, save for the Chromozoa tests and stuff like that. But you can walk from one area to another without any loading. And for the time, for the N64, that was really, really impressive.
Yeah, and it's funny to me because I feel like the most clunky part of Star Fox Adventures is the whole chunks of Dinosaur Planet becoming like separate land masses floating out into space. Because there's I remember playing it, there just felt like some sort of narrative disconnect there where it felt like I was missing some context for like, they have to open up the gateway to get there, but it's on this floating chunk. And obviously they had to implement, or they wanted to implement R-Wing sections to further justify the Star Fox brand. And here it's just like, oh no, you just go over to Dark Ice Mines. It's still over there. But, I could put together the pieces, no pun intended, in the narrative and be like, yeah, Dark Ice Mines was, adjacent to Snowhorn Waste. It's never really clarified, but sure, that's where it would go, obviously. And now everybody in Dark Ice Mines is kind of captive in this floating sort of satellite chunk of the planet. But, everything from like the boss battle, like that's all very familiar, right? And then it's when we get to Swapstone Hollow here, Thorntail Hollow in the Star Fox Adventures. I do like the Star Fox Adventures names where they usually name something after the tribe.
Yeah.
It just helps with cohesion in my opinion, but that's when things go completely off the rails, and I don't understand anything. What is Diamond Bay? What is a point back? What point back is, by the way, I'm just reading this out so you at home can't see this. Point back is written in the same sort of stylized Dinosaur Planet naming convention where it's a compound word with both words capitalized. So all one word, point back, capital P, capital B. So I'm assuming a point back is a dinosaur from a tribe that didn't make it into SFA.
Yeah, it's actually a Stegosaurus. If you think about that, pointy back, right? It makes sense, yeah?
Fuck! So wait a second. Whoa, Steve, I'm having some ideas here. Have we seen Stegosauruses elsewhere in the DKU? Like have Stegosauruses been in Banjo-Tooie?
Yes, they have.
What about the point back?
Hyle, Dinosaur Planet might be more DKU than Star Fox Adventures.
Okay, now let's I'm not here to tear down Star Fox Adventures, because here's my thing. I brought up Rise of Skywalker before, and all these Star Wars fans are in a hot, wet lather over the like the original pre J.J. Abrams script for episode 9, which was called something like Duel of the Fates. Duel of the Fates, that's what it's called. And in my opinion, it's schlock. It's terrible. But because it is the thing they didn't get, they're putting it on pedestal as like this would have been better.
Right.
Ultimately. And I don't want to do that here. Like I'm intrigued by this, but the grass is always greener, you know? So I know we're going to have it out at the end, but
yeah, we'll come out swinging for sure by the end of this podcast.
So Diamond Bay. Diamond Mine is where you mine diamonds. Yeah. Diamond Bay is just the plates in Dinosaur Planet. Diamond Bay. Wow.
Okay, so let me just go quickly back to Galadon, because that was a coding nightmare for a little bit.
Galadon, by the way, is the boss of Dark Ice Mines.
Yeah. So the way that you're supposed to do it, and of course with Star Fox Adventures, you have the leisure of going, okay, well, we'll separate these areas and we'll have an Arwing section in between. But the way that Dinosaur Planet did it was they said, we're going to give Tricky further commands, and as he learns commands, he'll be able to do more things. So the way that you're supposed to get into Snowhorn Waste to begin with, or the Northern Waste as it's called, you were supposed to use a distract command on a guard claw, who would then try to swat Tricky away and move in the process, at which point you could sneak by him and Tricky would then follow you. As you're then in the mines, as you go down, Galadon is frozen in the wall, which you use the flame command as Tricky to melt him. And then that causes him to wake up, swallow the spellstone, and you know the whole story from there. We didn't have Tricky commands because the game wasn't sure what was going on. We've since gone through and we found out there's cutscenes that are supposed to happen that weren't being triggered. So we had to manually add those commands back in. And actually, at this point, we actually put in a levitation code. So there was a lot of things that were just kind of flying over anyway. So that was one of the first collaborations from the team to put together a levitation code. And just as an aside, that code is extremely long. It's like 92 lines. And unfortunately, if you're using one of the emulators that really, it makes the game look the best because it restores all textures. I don't know if you've seen, there's a YouTuber called Oni Plays, and he was playing through Dinosaur Planet, and he had one episode out, and there was a lot of white textures everywhere that weren't loading properly. If you play it through one of the emulators, it actually restores all the textures anyway. So you can play it as intended, which is, really nice. It's called RetroArch if you're looking into it. But anyway, after all those textures were restored and everything, it worked as intended. And, we ended up putting the code in, which took, the point that sorry, I got kind of lost my own thought. The reason that it was such a pain in the ass is because you had to enter that code manually. So you had to go through 92 lines of code, just click-clacking away until we discovered you could do it out the back end. But anyway.
Steve?
Yep.
Good job. Click-clack. DKC2 enemy.
Oh, totally intentional for me to mention that beetle. I hope that restores my license to talk about rare games again
you're brought up to neutral status. So
okay.
Yeah.
Well, as long as I'm not a no-hoper, I'm all right. Which reference of that should give me one peak a little higher than that. But anyway, yeah. So we figured out the commands, we finally beat the boss, and here's the kicker at the very end of it. So you defeat Galadon, you get the Spellstone back, and the game goes, oh, congratulations, we're going to put you at the back, like we're going to, teleport you up to the top, so now you can carry on with your adventure. The problem was that the game gave you coordinates that didn't have a map. So all of a sudden you'd see Fox scream as he hurtled through this endless void of blackness. And of course, when you die in the game says, okay, your character has fallen off a ledge or a hole or whatever. We're going to respawn you at the last place that you were standing, which happens to be where you fell. So all of a sudden it was just this loop of purgatory of Fox going, dying, dying, dying. And we went, how the hell are we supposed to fix this? Because at the end, it always does that. You defeat Galadon and then purgatory, Galadon, purgatory, Galadon, every single time. So we had some clever people come in and finally find out a way. And actually, it escapes my mind how we solved it. But anyway, we finally had a way that the cutscene went as normally, because you're thrown out of the mine. So that falling animation is supposed to happen, but you are supposed to presumably land on the ground after that, which we ended up restoring, thankfully, and that's how we solved the Dark Ice Mine problem. But that, again, was a day's problem, defeating a boss and finally trying to get the game to work as intended. So that sorts the Dark Ice Mine. So I bet you're wondering now, you're probably sitting here going, when are they going to get to Diamond Bay? Like, the fireworks episode of Itchy and Scratchy. So I will now field any questions you have about Diamond Bay, Hyle.
What's Diamond Bay?
Okay, Diamond Bay is essentially the replacement for what we got in Star Fox Adventures for Moon Mountain Pass, connecting to Volcano Force Point Temple. So in the original Star Fox Adventures, you'd go through a secret little passage to the left, or the right rather, instead of the left, that would lead you to Cloud Runner. If you take the right, you get to Volcano Force Point. But Diamond Bay is this little inlet, sort of Jolly Roger's Lagoon-esque, that happens after this massive cascading waterfall. And the way that you're supposed to get there is you're supposed to feed a fish to one of the tribes at the top, who then, for some reason, gives you a log, which you can then sail down into Diamond Bay proper. Unfortunately, we couldn't get that working, and it's still kind of unknown how we're supposed to do that. But presumably, you're supposed to get a fishing net from the shop. Swapstone Hollow shop is the same as it is in Thorntail. But you get a fishing net, you catch a fish, you give it to him, and he gives you a log. We're still trying to work through that. But in the meantime, we tried going through just swimming manually. It was very buggy, very crashy, but we were able to get to Diamond Bay after a lot of attempts. So it's just make a lot of save states as you're going down the waterfall, basically. But you meet with this point back who is distressed because she lost her eggs. So there's this whole little side mission that you have to do on the sand in this giant, or this little cave off the side. You retrieve her eggs, and she goes, "Oh, I'll show you the way to get to Volcano Force Point." So she'll open a path, and when you follow the path down to its end, you finally see Volcano Force Point Temple. So that area was removed from from Star Fox Adventures and replaced whole kind of haphazardly with Moon Mountain Pass as an extra little inlet. So that solves that issue.
Interesting. I'm still hung up on point backs, I have to be honest, because, I thought the most obscure type of dinosaur from these mythos would be the bonehead from, you see in Cloud Runner Fortress, right? But now I've got a complete dinosaur tribe that never even made it.
Yeah, that character actually plays a much more prominent role in Dinosaur Planet as well.
Oh my!
Yeah.
Well, maybe we should plow ahead then.
Maybe we should, yeah. Yeah, so we've got that semi-working, but it still is workable. You can follow that to its end. Oh, and you do get the Chromozoa test of strength after that. So after you leave the temple from placing the spellstone, there's a little path off to the side that you follow, and it takes you to the next Chromozoa test. So after you warp there, you're basically put in a test of strength. So it's like not a tug of war, but there's like a plinth in the center that has a long log on the side of it that you have to push. And funny enough, you're facing against Crystal, who's also trying to push it. So it's a button masher game, sort of like Mario Party. And by defeating her, you get, exactly. It doesn't burn the palm of your hand, luckily. But after doing that, you do get the spirit. After beating her in his test of strength, you drop that off, and then you swap over to Crystal. So do you want to read Crystal Act 3?
Sure. Crystal Act 3. Yeah, good. I like long things.
Oh, yeah.
Quote me on that. Crystal and Kite have now returned to Warlock Mountain. As they approach the wizard, the spirit leaves her body and reveals itself. It is known as Quan Ata Lachu, one of 8 beings that the Chromozoa once worshipped. What the fuck? Crystal must take its spirit and release it within Warlock Mountain. This causes the huge floating diamond within the mountain to rotate. The reason for this will soon be revealed. They must collect 8 Chromozoa spirits as their second main task. Leaving Warlock Mountain, Crystal decides it is time for Kite to return to her tribe. They make their way up through a strange mountainous area called Moon Mountain Pass, until they reach the grand entrance to Cloud Runner Fortress. Entering the fortress, they are immediately attacked by sharp claws and some strange robotic devices. This isn't technology that the dinosaurs would have? ? Making their way into the fortress, they see General Scales has got there first and is interrogating Kite's mother, Queen of the Cloud Runner tribe. He demands that she reveals the location of a spellstone, hidden somewhere within the fortress. When she refuses, he kills her. Crystal attempts to stop Kite from revealing themselves, but suddenly a robot appears from behind, and she is knocked unconscious. When Crystal awakes, she is trapped inside a dark dungeon cell. Kite must have been captured by General Scales. Oh, Kite. After escaping from the dungeon, freeing a trapped dinosaur and reactivating the power to the fortress, Crystal finds Kite. Kite tells her that the dinosaur she helped is a Spellstone Guardian. To uncover the hiding place of the Spellstone, they must explore the fortress and find Kite's brothers and sisters, who were hidden when the Sharp Claws arrive. They eventually find their way into the tunnels beneath the fortress, but Scales has got there first and is just about to grab the Spellstone when Crystal arrives. He passes it to one of his Sharp Claws before using his mysterious belt to warp out of the chamber. That must be how he survived the fall from the galleon. The remaining Sharp Claws race off on their jet bikes, with Crystal in hot pursuit. Blasting them from their bikes, she gains the Spellstone, which is then activated by the Guardian. Leaving the fortress behind, they head off to locate the Desert Force Point Temple. Desert Force Point Temple. What? To reach the Desert Force Point, Crystal and Kite must first cross the Golden Plains. Golden Plains, what? This is a huge, barren desert. What? After making their way into the temple, they place the Spellstone. Returning back through the desert, what? They witness a strange mirage. The mirage claims to be a Chromozoa, and tells them to go back to Moon Mountain Pass. But before they go, Saber must first collect moon seeds hidden beneath Swapstone Hollow. I just imagined Oprah talking about moon seeds.
And you get a moon seed. And you get a moon seed.
We've got moon seeds! All right. Wow! That was both familiar and alien at the same time. That was a trip. So first, I just gotta say, before you tell me all the tricks that came towards, making this workable.
That has a sad ending, foreshadowing, but go ahead.
Okay. Queen Cloudrunner murdered in front of Kite. The brutal. The whole bit, like the speeder bike sequence underneath Cloudrunner Fortress was done with Crystal in this version. Wild. A desert.
Yes.
Wow. I would never even consider that there would be a desert on Dinosaur Planet. That is just something that is not in my brain space. I don't have room for that knowledge. And the fact that you can clearly see where they condensed a lot of this.
Yes,
like
for
the
sure.
The Chromozoa mirage or the Chromozoa spirit appearing. That happens in Moon Mountain Pass in Star Fox Adventures, and I think the implication is that's Andros fucking with Fox, and basically pulling a Lost reference. Buckle up, everyone! Pulling a Man in Black on Fox and making him think one thing while he's manipulating events. Smoke Monster, for those who don't know Lost, that's what's the Smoke Monster is known as the Man in Black. But anyway, that's a lot of info, and again, it's both like I can see both narratives playing out in my head: Dinosaur Planet and Star Fox Adventures, and I can just see like how they snip things out of Dinosaur Planet and then just weave them back into the more streamlined Star Fox Adventures version. Yeah.
So with the Desert Force Point Temple, this is where our story unfortunately has a sad ending. Actually, before I get to that, I should go chronologically, shouldn't I? Yeah, just about the Cloudrunner Fortress. That plays exactly as intended. There's no fixes that we need to implement. That is pretty well done. Like, you will find no errors in that that space. And you do meet the boneheaded tribe, the Grattabug, and he is a Spellstone Guardian in this version. He would have been demoted in Star Fox Adventures, but that's where he kind of has his...
He's basically just like the mechanic of Cloud Runner Fortress in Star Fox Adventures. Yeah.
Yeah. And further on, too, there's a whole stealth section that you have to do as Crystal during this. And the interesting thing is you earn a spell from Grattabug that basically tells, like, it transforms you into a Sharp Claw. So when the Sharp Claws look at you, they just see another Sharp Claw. So there's this whole kind of stealth section. But the funny thing is, that spell is available for both Crystal and Saber to use. So you figure, okay, well, there's got to be a Saber transformation he's going to turn into. Maybe he does a Sharp Claw as well. And here's where the community went nuts, because if you use the spell as Crystal, you turn into a Sharp Claw. If you use the spell as Saber, it ditches the Fox outfit and gives him Saber again. So that's how they found it. They said, oh my God, this is how you play as Saber. So they were looking in the memory. They said, okay, when that spell is used, it basically swaps your model out for like 0-0 to 0-1. Okay, so let's just tell the game forever and a day to now swap any 0-0s for 0-1. We'll play permanently as Saber. That will work. That will carry through. And it has. He does crash a little bit in cutscenes because, it wasn't intended at that point. They were in the process of swapping stuff over. So there's probably some code that's referring to it going, load me Fox. And it goes, it's Saber. And it goes, no, I'm going to crash if you do that. So there is still that, but you can play up to a certain point, like you can just run around as Saber to your heart's delight. We have codes for that within the wiki as well. So that was kind of a cool finding, which is paralleled by the disappointing finding we found afterwards. So we've got the Spellstone. We just crossed into the Golden Plains, which is this massive kind of Gerudo Desert kind of thing. Like it's just this massive open plain that leads into a temple, which the music that Dave Wise has made for this is amazing. I love Desert.
I was thinking specifically when I was mentioning this, I wonder what the David Wise music sounds like for this.
Oh, it's gorgeous. Like the thing is that there's a lot of music that is carried over from Star Fox Adventure because they share locations. So he doesn't remake songs. And in fact, some of the things that he's done, you can find it in the music tests of Star Fox Adventures of old Dinosaur Planet tracks. So in a way, some of those tunes have survived. Like I know that you can play the original Cape Claw theme and the Discovery Falls theme in Dinosaur or in Star Fox Adventures that are from Dinosaur Planet using the jukebox mode. But for Desert Force Point Temple, that was a song that was created specifically for that area. And of course, because Desert Force Point is now Ocean Force Point, they don't use the same track. It's its own unique tune. And that tune, just listening to it, you're like, oh, it's not on the level of aquatic ambience, but it gives you the vibes of aquatic ambience, if you know what I mean by that.
Yeah, sure. I of course I know what you mean by that. You know, of course.
Yeah, it's the vibes. But we actually had a user on the in the Discord named Yumi, and she is a die-hard Dinosaur Planet fan. Like it got to the point where she was streaming the game and she cosplayed as Crystal on one of her playthroughs, like the whole full body thing. It was amazing. But she has gone from start to finish so many times. Like anytime the community came through going, we now have the next part, she will start the game over again so that we can, prove that there's no issues. Because if you cheat through some of the game and then go through the rest of it, it might mess something up in the future. So she goes, no, I want to play as legitimately as I can in case it screws anything up. So we finally got her to Desert Force Point Temple. She put down the Spellstone, attempted to interact, and the game does not progress from that point. We have been stuck there since like a year ago. We've not been able to progress legitimately as a chronological thing in the game from this point. Everything stops at Desert Force Point. However, we have gotten non-linear things to work. We have gone into later acts, like kind of glitching it through a Saber, where we can play through more temples and stuff like that. So we know that there's more of the game to complete, but trying to get it work, chronologically, it just doesn't follow through, unfortunately, because you can't place that Spellstone. But if it were possible to do so, you would leave the temple, you would go to the Golden Plains again, you'd go back to Swapstone Hollow, and you'd swap over to Saber again.
That's wild. I have a question about Moon Mountain Pass.
Sure. In
this build. Is Moon Mountain Pass still the origin point of the Sharp Claw, or is that context not even provided at this point?
That context, it's kind of Moon Mountain Pass rather acts as just a path to get to Cloud Runner Fortress. That's what it has, and it has its own little areas on the side too. I don't think at this point the Sharp Claw are necessarily living there. I mean, they basically throw barrels at you from a point before, but I think it's the Cloudrunner tribe that lives there, and then it's the Sharpclaws that have invaded it. I think that's the plot of event. Don't quote me on it, but I think that's
but
how
is
it's
the aesthetic still the same? Kind of that dreamy, like otherworldly, like lunar type of environment.
Kind of. It's not to the point where you can tell it's like an asteroid kind of thing, but it has a similar like rocky purple aesthetic.
Because Moon Mountain Pass is probably one of my favorite areas in Star Fox Adventures, and I just adore the otherworldly spaciness of it, and the fact that when you read the little info dumps, if you take the time to read them, it's like, oh, this is how the Sharpclaw tribe evolved from the radiation from this kind of asteroid strike, and I just love it. I love that area. Plus, they throw barrels at you there, so of course I love it.
Well, that's in DP as well.
Yeah.
Do you enjoy the bioluminescent plants that are in Moon Mountain Pass?
Absolutely.
Okay, they're not in Dinosaur Planet, so that's probably a point to you for Star Fox.
It's also why I really loved the areas in the Pirates of the Caribbean Tall Tales and Sea of Thieves.
Right.
The areas that
guys,
take place in the Sea of the Damned. Yeah, where you've got the like purple plants that like shimmer when you walk through them. Very Moon Mountain Pass.
Mm. Yeah, I thought you meant because they also have the Sea of Thieves art team is like ridiculously talented. Like it's almost like the concept art leaps off the page. It's brilliant. But there are coral guys that have the same kind of like bioluminescence thing going on. I just like the skeletons that pop out too. Like I just love it.
Yeah.
Do you want to do Saber Act 3 or shall
I?
Sure.
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
I've got some wind left in my sails. I've got some wind on my my Cloudrunner wings here. Saber Act 3. The message is sent to Saber and Tricky, who collect the seeds before they venture back to the volcano force point. Saber and Tricky have now completed another test and have collected the second Chromozoa spirit. They take this back to Warlock Mountain, whereby they release it, causing the huge diamond to spin faster, sucking up raw magic energy from deep within the planet. When they return to Swapstone Hollow, Tricky wishes to go back to his home to see how his mother is doing. Together, they go to Earthwalker Temples. Interesting. Upon entering the area, it is heavily guarded by strange robots. They find Tricky's mother hiding beneath the main temple. She needs them to collect the sun and moonstones and also asks Saber to enter the walled city and rescue her husband, the king of the Earthwalker tribe. Though there is a problem, he must do it alone. The walled city is a place where the most dangerous dinosaurs live. Here, anarchy rules, and the chaos is presided over by the Red-Eye tribe. It is also home to the Hook-Claw tribe, a distant relation to the Sharpclaws. They are extremely clever, but will show you no mercy. There are 2 wrestling pay-per-view names in this paragraph alone. That's for you, Josh Wallen, the Geek Critique. Entering the jungle surrounding the ancient city, Saber discovers an egg that hatches, revealing a baby Red-Eye. Oh, sidekick. The baby must think Saber is his mother, so Saber crushes it and laughs about it. No, I'm joking.
This isn't Conker's Bad Fur Day.
The baby must think Saber is his mother as he remains with him during his stay in the walled city. The baby has a special sidekick command that Saber can utilize throughout. Saber finds the King Earthwalker and rescues him from a gang of Hook Claws. He tells of their plot to take control of the city. However, he does not believe the Red Eyes will listen to him, as they prefer to eat first and ask questions later. The city is surrounded by the Twilight Marsh. What the hell? It is here that the Spellstone Guardian resides. He helps Saber to stop the Hook Claws, allowing him to return the baby back to his father, the king of the Red-Eye tribe. I want my baby back, baby back, baby back, baby back, baby back, baby back, baby back. I want my baby back. Chili's ribs, babe back ribs. Oh, you're Canadian. You don't have that commercial.
I've seen Austin Powers.
Oh God, did I just reference Austin Powers inadvertently? Whoa.
No, you referenced Austin Powers 2 inadvertently.
Oh God! Oh God!
Good pod.
Oh God!
Good podcast, Hyle.
Get it all out. All right. By taking part in the King's Challenge, you gain the Spellstone. Activate it and meet up back with the King Earthwalker to return to Earthwalker Temple. As a reward, the king reveals the location of the mysterious communication chamber. Fucking where Zordon lives? It was via this chamber that he was able to contact Randorn in the first place. Saber is excited, as this may allow Crystal, Randorn, and himself to return home once General Scales has been stopped. The king tells them to take the Spellstone back to the Volcano Force Point.
So, do you have any questions about what you've just read?
I'm getting a bit lost. This is where this is feeling strange and unfamiliar, albeit with little touchstones or
right.
spellstones that I do recognize. Obviously, a lot of this is taken. Well, not taken. A lot of this was worked into the Walled City segment in Star Fox Adventures, but you've got so much here that is not part of that narrative. And like everything from hook claws to the marsh area, Twilight Marsh, and then you even have a baby Red Eye following you around. What?
Okay, so this is where the DNA of the condensed story disagrees a lot with what we ended up getting in the final of Dinosaur Planet, because in actuality, the thorough line that you get in Dinosaur Planet is that you fight Clanadek, in the Walled City, right? And that's what you do in Star Fox Adventures, and that's what you happen with here. There is no baby Red Eye that we found. There is no kind of mutual, like, getting the tribes to work together. There's no Hook Claw that we can find either. It's just Sharp Claw so far, as in terms of rival inside the Walled City. So a lot of that has been left on the cutting room floor, but we do get to fight Clanadek, which is pretty cool. It's the same running around that kind of square interior as you're trying to get him. So they do have that. So that's still very much part of the game, but even the Twilight Marsh doesn't technically exist. You only get the Earthwalker temples and the Walled City within it. So there's a lot of even that you can see that was chopped down to fit in Dinosaur Planet that was then taken over directly to Star Fox Adventures.
Yeah, even like things like the expanded notion of what the Earthwalker area is, because it's just the Walled City. Right?
Yeah.
It's just the Walled City in Star Fox Adventures. And there's no Earthwalker temples, per se. So it's all much more heavily fleshed out here.
Yeah. For sure.
Do you want me to...
Of course... I was going to say just the Diamond Bay stuff. So you go to Diamond Bay again because you've got to drop off the Spellstone that you've got from the boss Clanadek there.
Yeah.
There's another problem that the Point Back has. You'll see a routine here. You always have to solve a problem before you're permitted entry. We have an egg snatcher game at this point, so her eggs have been stolen now, and you have to get them back. So that's where that comes into play. And then, of course, there's the moon seeds you got to get. So after we theorize at this point, because there's not many places you can get fish at this point, or not fish. I'm thinking of the other one. That you can get moon seeds, and one of them is within this log at Swapstone Hollow, and I think it's the same in Thorntail. Remember that log that you can kind of go into?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same thing there, but you have to find a way to get Tricky in there. And unfortunately, Tricky can't climb very well, and you can't lift the poor guy. So what you have to do is you have to go into Northern Wastes. There's waterfalls. There's a waterfall, rather, that has ice cubes flowing down it. You jump onto there with Tricky. You ride the waterfall, because remember, the world is all connected, and that will actually bring you to the bottom of the log. You then send Tricky into the log. He grabs the moon seeds, and that's how you're supposed to give him their crystals. So there's a lot of really, I could definitely see this being a game fact heavy game where people are going, where are the moon seeds? I can't find, and getting forward to that. But that's how you get those in there. So yeah, if you want to continue on, sorry about that.
No, I was just going to ask you about the communication chamber.
Yeah. So yeah, we've actually found that in the map too. So at the beginning of the game, there's a communication chamber directed to Animus, and I think it's called the Lost City or the city maybe, that Randorn and Crystal and Fox they share. And basically they're given a distress call, like a beacon by the King Earthwalker going, you must save our planet, General Scales is here. And then you use that. So it's an actual place in the game. It's like kind of not futuristic, because there is a futuristic element in a later area. But with this one here, it's just like 3 sort of half pillars on a wall, and we don't know what you're supposed to do in there precisely, but that will, like, it's a location that's mentioned in the game with subtitles. The dialogue doesn't match at all, which is actually kind of funny. Just not to go off on a tangent here, but when they started recording new dialogue, they didn't change the subtitles. So the subtitles will still play out and you'll hear what originally was, and then the Star Fox dialogue is over top. So it'll say something like, we sent a distress beacon to planet Animus to signal Crystal and Randorn to visit us. But then while it's, doing that in text, it says, we sent a distress beacon to General Pepper, who then told Slippy to, and you're going, oh my God, like there's so much dissonance here. But, luckily we have the original subtitles so we can see, what was meant for that. But that's what the communication chamber is. It's like, the first point of contact between the King Earthwalker and Randorn and the rest.
Yeah, it's just weird. It's just weird. Like, Randorn in general is where I really start feeling like I'm not in my home reality. And then every time you bring Randorn back into it, I'm like, wait a second. Yeah. But what about General Pepper? What about Peppy? Yeah. What about Rob 64? All right.
Not in the game.
So I believe we're to Crystal Act 4?
Yep. So we just finished that. Yeah, Volcano Force Point Temple. Yeah. So yeah, Crystal Act 4.
All right, Crystal Act 4. Now Crystal has the seeds. She must plant them. By feeding them fire at night, parentheses, they are moon seeds, after all. They grow, allowing her to enter the hidden areas of Moon Mountain Pass. After discovering another Chromozoa shrine and gaining a further spirit, the mirage appears again. It tells them that 6 spirits must be placed within Warlock Mountain before the Chromozoa Palace will open. Randorn had told her that the Chromozoa had been extinct for millions of years, but yet here was one guiding her? She returns to Warlock with the spirit. Randorn asks Crystal about his son, Saber. He still hasn't been able to speak to him yet. He just wants to apologize. Crystal places the 3rd spirit, and together with Kite, they head back to Swapstone Circle. So quick little act there. But so here we have the Moon Mountain Pass appearance of the Chromozoa spirit or whatever, which is where it first happened in Star Fox Adventures. And the only time it really happened in Star Fox Adventures. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. I'm just going to keep going. Because that was a short act, and this is a short act. Saber Act.
Okay, fair enough.
4.
Ooh, before you continue, though, I just got to tell you about the test that you face. Because that would be the test of fear, which in Star Fox Adventures, the test of fear basically is like, it's kind of a DDR thing, right? Like you have to press a button as the sharp claws kind of jump out at you.
It's a Dance Revolution for you grandpas out there.
Yeah, but that's what it is, right? Like there's actually an involved aspect. The test of fear in Dinosaur Planet has the war game solution, I call it. The only winning move is not to play. General Scales, as a hologram, will charge at you from across the room screaming. And if you move away from the platform, you lose because you failed the test of fear. You got afraid. But if you put the controller down and just stay completely still, that's how you pass the test of fear.
Okay.
So
if you went off and made yourself a sandwich, you win.
Exactly.
Cool.
It's cool. Luigi and Mario Party for sure.
Cool. And you get a sandwich, so win-win.
Exactly.
All right, Saber Act 4. Saber and Tricky have by this time placed their 2nd spellstone. On the way out from the temple, they discover the Moonstone and return back to Earthwalker Temple. This reveals another Chromozoa shrine that was hidden inside the top of the main temple. Saber completes the test and heads back to Warlock Mountain with the spirit. Whilst there, he calls out to his father, but there is no reply. Randoran's condition is getting worse. He is too ill to answer his son. Saber releases the spirit and returns to Swapstone Hollow. That's the act. What was the test here?
So the test there, that was actually I should say, the Chromozoa shrine at the top of the temple, that is pretty similar to Star Fox Adventures, right? The whole sun and moon chamber kind of thing. They do something similar here, and it's at the top of the temple. So it's kind of a Mayan structure, it's like a pyramid with the top kind of taken off.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, if you think about that. And the shrine will actually raise out of the top. So there's a second layer that pops up. And that would be, if I can find the list here, Earthwalker Temple, Sun and Moon. The test of skill. So with that one, it's the test of observance in Star Fox Adventures. So that's the one where you watch the 3-card Monty game played. So you have to keep your eye on the prize as it rolls around the room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's just that, yeah.
Okay.
Not much to say there.
No.
But it can be done in the game, which is nice.
Crystal Act 5.
This is where it gets interesting.
Oh, okay. Back on Swapstone Circle, the Lightfoot Chief has revealed a hidden entrance that leads from his settlement to the sacred dinosaur burial grounds of Blackwater Canyon. He refuses to allow Kite to enter, insisting that Crystal take a Lightfoot guide. Within Blackwater Canyon, Crystal discovers the Tree of Souls.
I love it. I love it when you read that and it comes across that. I'd prefer you read the rest of them. I hope that's not too much reading, but I love it when you come across something you're like, this makes no sense.
Tree of Soul, is this like Jungle Beat? All of a sudden, we got a sacred tree here. When a dinosaur dies, its magic energy is returned into the planet through the magic powers of the tree. This is just Avatar. This is just James Cameron's Avatar.
Well, then
Steve?
They should sue.
I was saying, back when I saw Avatar in 2009, I was like, this is just Dinosaur Planet. This is just Star Fox Adventures. All right. Its magic energy is returned to the planet through the magic powers of the tree, yada, yada, yada. The Shadow Hunter tribe, slow down. The Shadow Hunter tribe are the protectors of this place, and their leader, a Spellstone Guardian, agrees to give her the Spellstone. However, his jealous son has other ideas and takes the stone just as it is about to be handed over. Together with the Lightfoot, Crystal chases the Shadow Hunter throughout the canyon, eventually catching up with him just inside the gates of the final resting place. The area is littered with bones. The Shadow Hunter refuses to give Crystal the Spellstone, but their presence in a sacred area has angered the spirits. Ooh, suddenly a huge bone monster emerges, trapping the Shadow Hunter within its cage-like ribs. Crystal and the Lightfoot defeat the monster. Yeah, thank you. And save the Shadow Hunter. He realizes that they are really trying to save his planet and gives Crystal the Spellstone. His father activates it, and they return to the Lightfoot Chief. On her arrival back at Swapstone Circle, the Chief gives Crystal a Chromozoa tablet. This has been with the Lightfoot for many, many years. He tells her to take it to Cape Claw. Reunited with Kite, they cross the Golden Plains and once more enter the Force Point Temple. With their second Spellstone placed, they head back to Cape Claw with the Chromozoa tablet. Maybe this will explain the mirage. The tablet allows them to open further hidden areas within Cape Claw, eventually uncovering another Chromozoa shrine. Crystal completes the test and gains another spirit. However, they still do not know the location of the Chromozoa Palace that the mirage spoke about. They return to Warlock Mountain to release the spirit. When Crystal reaches Randoran, he has collapsed on the ground. I've fallen and I can't get up. By feeding him, he feels well enough to speak. Sounds like he's just diabetic. Like, he just needed a cookie.
Well, I mean, he does have a life alert pendant on him, so I mean, he does give that. Yeah.
He recalls how they arrived on this planet and hopes by getting access to the communication chamber, they can return to their own planet, Animus. She releases the spirit and returns to Swapstone Circle. Steve, I don't even know where to begin here. You're going to have to take over for a while I process all of this.
Okay. So why don't you point the names that you didn't understand, and I'll explain there.
Let's start with Blackwater Canyon. I mean, this is obviously a unique area, right?
It is, yeah. It didn't appear in Star Fox Adventures, and if you look at the Dinosaur Planet map that I mentioned before, anybody listening here, Blackwater Canyon is like half the size of the available level. So if you take Golden Plains and Swapstone Circle and Cape Claw, you combine them together, that is roughly the size of Blackwater Canyon. It's that big. Here's the problem, though. With every other area in the game that we have, kind of taking this crash course of programming by joining this Discord, you learn things like events and triggers and flags and words like that. And what that basically means for the unaware, if you have an area within a video game, there's certain areas that you can go to within a land that have certain triggers with them. So it says, hey, when they step here, play a cutscene, or when they interact with this object here, do this thing. And the entire video game is built on these triggers and events and flags. Unfortunately, Blackwater Canyon has none of them. All Blackwater Canyon is just the actual landscape itself. That is it. So if you almost think back to the year 2000 on December 1st, right before this was published, there was probably somebody that was just about ready to click those into place. And they went, oh, you're busy on that? Oh, yeah, I am. All right, we'll leave it. Help me on Cloud Runner Fortress. Yeah, all right. That must have been how it happened, because they abandoned that area and they worked on something else, because we right now have no connection to that area to reprogram anything. All of the stuff, if we do restore that area, will have to be custom programmed, which means there is no skeleton boss, there is no interaction with the Shadowhunter tribe, which I bet you have some questions about that. The Tree of Life is there as a background element. Like, you can go to the Tree of Life, but there is no way to interact with it whatsoever. It's like a diorama. You can just look and see, no interaction.
Can I make a guess on the Shadowhunter tribe?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Remember in Star Fox Adventure, was it the Test of Fear when you had like raptors attacking you?
Yeah, there you go.
What? I'm right?
You're right. Shadowhunters are raptors.
Because the shadow terminology was bringing to mind the hallucinations that Fox was having of these dinosaurs that did not appear anywhere else in Star Fox Adventures. And I guess some part of me has always had an inkling they were cut dinosaurs from the original iterations of Dinosaur Planet.
And you are absolutely right. That the Shadowhunters are raptors. They're the clever girls of the Dinosaur Planet. Now, that said, unfortunately, they're not there in Blackwater Canyon that you can interact with. But, however, we do have their models in the game. We've ripped them and everything like that. We can see them and they look fantastic. Like they look really, really cool. So it's one of those things you're like, I wish you were there, because you would have been a cool dinosaur to interact with.
It's also interesting to me, like this whole notion of Blackwater Canyon and the Tree of Souls, is it? That, in Dinosaur Planet, on Dinosaur Planet in Star Fox Adventures, the whole like spiritual side of things is really maintained by the Chromozoa spirits and their legacy. The dinosaurs have their own beliefs and superstitions, but they are not really the driving like force in the magic of the planet. They protect spellstones, they do this and do that, but it's all really implied to be relics from the Chromozoa. And here we've got more agency for the dinosaur tribes as far as the spirituality of the planet and the magical energies therein, which I find fascinating.
So to continue on with the Act 2, because there's still quite a bit to do. You still got to drop off the Spellstone, and they have that Cape Claw mention, which is kind of odd, right?
Yeah.
So here's what happens with that. So you take the Spellstone, you go to Golden Plains, and immediately as you go there, you see a Sharp Claw on a jet bike who's speeding around. And Crystal's like, what? And then as she's distracted by him, another one comes up and smacks her on the back of the head, grabbing the stone, and takes it away on his jet bike. So there was a new mission on Golden Plains, this big open area where you're supposed to chase them down on a speeder bike and get your stone back. That we're trying to get working, but it's one of those things, it's in the middle, where it's like, we might be able to, we might not, we'll be able to restore it somehow, but right now it's just not cooperating with us. We'll have to do more research. But anyway, that sorts that problem. So what about Cape Claw? What is this talking about now? So if you go into Cape Claw, in Star Fox Adventures, it ends at the Poison Room. But in Dinosaur Planet, it continues onwards, and it wraps around into this giant courtyard pagoda thing. It's like this kind of Japanese-inspired aesthetic. It's really cool. And in the center of this courtyard there's a well, and it's flooded. And around it are Chromozoa, I call them insets. They're basically like big holes where you're supposed to be able to place something. After you beat Blackwater Canyon, you get given one of those by the High Top tribe, which are the High Top tribe are still in Star Fox Adventures. They're the Brachiosaurus or Brontosaurus. I think at one point scientists discovered that the Brontosaurus skull was like a Brachiosaurus skull, but then they went back on that. I'm trying to remember the whole chronology with it. They're like, Brontosaurus doesn't exist. Now they're like, no, it does exist. We fucked up. But anyway.
But it doesn't really matter because these are all alien dinosaurs and they can be whatever we want them to be.
Well, there you go. Exactly. So in the document, it says that the Lightfoot gives you the stone. But in Dinosaur Planet, after you beat Blackwater Canyon, there's actually a secret exit that takes you back out to Discovery Falls because everything's connected. And we figured out, hey, even though Blackwater Canyon doesn't have flags in it, Discovery Falls absolutely does. So if you can float up or levitate at the certain spot, it thinks, oh, they just beat Blackwater Canyon. Better give them that Chromozoa tablet. So that cutscene is still within the game. He still gives it to you, and it gives you free reign in Cape Claw. And Cape Claw is my absolute favorite map of the game. I have fallen in love with it. And the reason being is, as soon as you come back with this Chromozoa tablet and you place it in the area, like in this the inset, this door on the other side of Cape Claw opens up and it expands the area by twice. So now it's not only a secret area, it's a ridiculously secret area times two. It's like even more stuff. So you go into this village area and they basically have this whole Chromozoa tablet thing where we're honestly, this has given us so much kind of homework to do. And there's a lot of programmers and coders that are trying to make this area work. But what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to be able to find these fire gems scattered around Cape Claw. You take them to these lighthouses and you light them up, and doing so will fulfill one of the insets. So there's 6 insets to fill in. 3 of them are by fire gems and 3 of them are by tablets. So the first one's given by the High Top tribe. You set that in, and you get the second. As soon as you set it in, it opens that door. Well, you can then go into a well in the village where you find a second Chromozoa tablet that's locked in this area. So you pick it up, you bring that back, you set it again. Now this secret waterfall opens up, and like this kind of passage behind a waterfall. And by going down to a beach, you discover another dinosaur that you have to fight. And by defeating it, it gives you the last one. So you take that back after all 3 lighthouses are lit and all 3 tablets are restored. The well in the center is meant to drain, and it gives you access to the next Chromozoa chamber. We are so ridiculously close to making that happen. It's not even funny. Funny enough, I don't want to gloat or anything. I ended up glitching my game up so bad. I ended up accidentally discovering those cutscenes and uploading them to the server, going like, guys, check this out. Like, this is crazy. So those are on the Dinosaur Planet wiki right now. If you go to the Cape Claw wiki, or the page on the wiki rather, and you scroll down, those cutscenes are preserved on that page as GIF images, and it's just really cool to see them all play out within that form, because Cape Claw has given us so much trouble trying to get that whole thing up and running. But that's supposed to take you into the test of character, and what that basically does is you fight against Saber. And the odd thing is, I don't think you're supposed to traditionally defeat him. You're not supposed to, club him to death and you win. I think you're supposed to show an item. So it's we're not supposed to fight. It's one of those kind of trick challenges. And that's supposed to get you the test. So we haven't figured out how to do that yet, but we're on the verge of discovering, and that will give you the next Chromozoa spirit.
All right. Well, Lot to process. Almost too much to process. It's almost sensory overload at this point. But there's still more. There's still so much more.
Yes.
So Saber Act 5, I believe. Yes.
Yep.
Saber Act 5. The Thorntails on Swapstone Hollow have now seen that Saber can be trusted. So they open the gates that lead into Willow Grove. Sure, why the fuck not? Willow Grove. This is a sacred land and is next to Dragon Rock. The final resting place of the dinosaur's god, the Chimeria dragon. But since General...
Okay. So this area will explain itself. I don't think you'll have follow-up questions for me.
Okay. But since General Scales began his war, the area has been sealed, and strange things have started to happen. Visible man sleeping in my bed. Yow! Who are you gonna call? All right. Willow Grove was slowly becoming a warped and mutated land. The plants have changed, and even the dinosaurs that have wandered through have become mutants. A little bit of Moon Mountain Pass in here, or at least what Moon Mountain Pass shook out to be in SFA. Saber and Tricky meet with many seemingly unfriendly mutants, but these dinosaurs are just angry at their situation and are not evil at all. The adventurers discover the 6th Chromozoa Shrine and complete the test to gain the spirit. The mutant leader is a great alchemist and tells them to return, as he might be able to help them enter Dragon Rock. They quickly return to Warlock Mountain. To their amazement, placing the 6th spirit reveals the location of the Chromozoa Palace. As the spirit is released, a great change occurs to the huge diamond. It transforms into a sun. Saber finds himself being lifted off the ground as the Quan Atalachu speak to him. They tell him that the evil must be stopped. They are not referring to General Scales, but something or someone else controlling him. They tell Saber about the majestic 8 planets. The first planets created when the universe began. Dinosaur Planet is one of these 8. To save this world, they must go to the Chromozoa. It seems that they do actually still exist. The Quan Atalachu continue by telling of a great war that the Chromozoa fought many eons ago. The war almost destroyed them all, but some still remain. This must be the destruction mentioned in the dinosaurs' history that actually gave birth to them. The Quan Atalachu ends by insisting that the evil must be stopped, but does not reveal the form of the being of which it speaks.
I was waiting for that, like, oh, here comes the overload.
I recognize Dragon Rock.
Yes, that is in fact an area that does appear in Star Fox Adventures.
Yeah.
In this alternate reality that you've dove headfirst into.
And Dragon Rock, of course, is where, like, the sharp... I mentioned Moon Mountain Pass, but in actuality, Dragon Rock in Star Fox Adventures is where the Sharp Claw are doing, like, genetic experiments. And they're kidnapping dinosaurs and experimenting on them. We don't get really much in the way of mutants, except what the final boss of Dragon Rock is sort of retconned into in Star Fox Adventures. But yeah. Steve, help me out here. I'm completely out of my element.
Okay, so yeah, basically this is an area that never ever appeared in Star Fox Adventures in any capacity whatsoever. If you actually go into Willow Grove, it's this kind of pit area, right? It's kind of like an inverse spiral mountain where there's these kind of tentacles reaching out of the ground. It's really kind of like, it's a really cool aesthetic, but there's supposed to be mutated dinosaurs around, and we haven't found any of those yet. We've actually talked about backporting some dinosaurs from later builds of the game, like in the kiosk demo, to kind of put that in. But the one thing that we do have is the leader, the alchemist. And I'm trying to remember, it's that armored dinosaur that has the club for a tail. Mm-hmm. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
Yes.
I think it's called, Ankylosaurus. it's one of those. And the cool thing about his character design is he's because he's mutated, he's like a split personality. So he's kind of Klungo-esque looking. He's got one big eye on one side and one tiny eye on one other side.
Oh, so
And the
just
cool thing-
a Steve Mails design.
Yeah, exactly. And the cool thing about him is as you're talking to him, he has dual voices. So, and basically his model was so screwed up, but we have one of the programmers, and actually I should pay tribute to the programmers. So we have a guy named Nugs, we have a guy named Musical Programmer, we have a guy named Jeebs, and I'm sure there's many, many, many others that can help. Those are the three that come to mind right now, though. But one of them ended up restoring that model, and he basically refers to you as he turns his head. So if he's talking to you as one character, he turns his head one way, but then he turns his head the other way to address you as the other character. You know what I mean? So it's constantly head.
So like Gollum.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So for instance, like, and you know, it's classic rare voice, you know, the whole thing there. So if you're talking to him, he'll be like, "Ah, I have been cursed. I am not a scary mutant." And then he'll turn his head and go, "I know of the Chromozoa and where it lies." You know, it has that whole like dual dynamic thing going on. So he tells you that, you know, you need to come back later to return to this area, because otherwise if you go forward, you'll be mutated just like the rest of the dinosaurs. So it, you know, it keeps you away from the rest, but you do find a Chromozoa shrine that takes you to the test of magic. And that's just a really basic one. Like there's these orbs floating around the room and you have to use your sword's ability to throw projectiles to basically take them out. You do that, you get the stone. It's a very short act, but it's very, very heavy on kind of lore, where it's talking about the Quanochalatu and all that kind of stuff. So it's similar thing with Crystal's act before. I found like a lot of the quick acts have a lot of, you know, heavy cutscenes to them, so they kind of balance it out with that.
Wow. So the Quanochalatu, clarify something for me. Are they in Star Fox Adventures? Are they what became just the Chromozoa spirits?
I believe that they were referred to in Star Fox Adventures the Quanochalatu as well. So
really?
I think that's I think there's a direct parallel there too. Yeah. Actually, I'm going to check the Star Fox wiki here. Just give me a second. Quanochalatu. Nikto. See if I can bring some Evil Dead thing here. Yeah, Quanochalatu. I believe they made an appearance in Star Fox Adventures, and I know everybody from the Discord right now is screaming, you know, at me right now, because especially Yumi is probably just rolling her eyes because, you know, I should know this, but I don't. I think it does make an appearance though, as the Quanochalatu, but it is the god of the Chromozoa, basically. No, there's a Reddit thread. There we go.
There's a Reddit thread, but I
think
don't.
It's in Star Fox Adventures.
I don't think it is. I'm gonna fight you on this.
Okay.
I think it was one of the things that was simplified for Star Fox Adventures. I do not recognize this terminology, and this is the kind
I've heard the term.
Well, you might have. It might have like leaked out at some point in the pre-release. And it's been out there in the ether, but this is the kind of pedantic terminology that I would get very like hyper obsessive over. And the fact that I just really learned about it right now, or at least like learned about it in a way that I just, because it never stuck with me because it was never firm canon. Yeah. I think in Star Fox Adventures, they just simplified it that these are just the Chromozoa spirits. These are just Chromozoa spirits. There's no other terminology for them. And Andros is posing as, he says it almost dismissively, like it's not even a serious thing. It is me, the mighty Chromozoa god, you know, like, but it's,
maybe that was it then. Was he called maybe Quanochalatu in Dinosaur or Star Fox Adventures? I swear, it was used once, maybe.
Okay, well, you know what? I don't know. But I think I don't think so. I think that was snipped out, and I think there was no context provided for the Chromozoa that appeared to you in Moon Mountain Pass, or just later to infer. A lot of Star Fox Adventures is inferring after the fact, where you're like, oh, okay, so that was Andros. That was the reason that happened. But you almost have to go back and play it again for everything to click.
Yeah, true enough.
Anyway, This is weird. I'm starting to get scared, Steve, because
okay.
This is no longer like familiar territory for me. I feel like reality is shifting around me. I feel like Marty McFly, who like he goes to bed, he goes into his bed, but he's that person now sleeping in somebody else's bed because 1985 is different. Biff Tannen is now the most powerful man in town, and he's married to his mom, and that's why you need to stick to peeping through windows and not just jumping into bed, because you never know when reality changes around you. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I would like to comfort you, Hyle, and say, don't worry, it gets easier. It doesn't. The next act will kill you, so go ahead.
Well, good, because I think I've lived a long enough life. Crystal Act
Here we go.
6. Oh boy, with the Chromozoa Palace entrance now open, Crystal and Kite head back to Cape Claw and enter the mouth of the huge rock skull. Inside, they discover hidden caves containing a translator object. Slippy can make it for them. What the fuck are they doing? This allows them to read the ancient texts that they will have seen throughout the landscape and helps them open the gates into the Chromozoa Palace. So this is like being able to read all the owl, not the owl, but the in Ocarina of Time.
Truth.
Yes. Yeah. Inside the palace, they discover a Chromozoa. He explains that the rest of his race are in suspended animation. The palace's emergency system woke him as the planet was in danger. They were being attacked by a dragon from the Chimerian race, their archenemy. This is who is controlling General Scales. The Great War had been fought between the Chromozoa and the dragons. The Chromozoa worshipped the Kwan-Atlachu, the creators of the universe. However, the dragons deemed that they to be more worthy than even the Kwan-Atlachu, and so a great war began. This war almost destroyed the whole of the universe, and climaxed in a final battle above a newly born world, Dinosaur Planet. The dinosaur's so-called god was actually the last great warrior dragon who was slain in the battle, his body falling onto the planet below. As time passed, a legend was born. The dinosaurs believed that their race had been created when the fallen dragon emerged from the flames. Now an ancestor of the dragon, known as Dracor, has returned for his revenge. By extracting all the magic energy from this world, he will finally destroy the Chromozoa. A spellstone once resided in the Chromozoa Palace, but it has disappeared. Typo. It has disappeared. Due to the huge quantity of magic energy being extracted, 2 tears in time and space have appeared within the fortress. The Chromozoa explains that Crystal and Kite will have to visit both the past, and the future to get the spellstone before it actually disappeared from the present. So this is the time heist from Avengers. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Crystal first...
Avatar, Avengers, they stole from it, you know.
All of pop culture from the last 20 years ripped off from this game.
Yep.
Yeah. Crystal first journeys to the future, where she discovers the palace has been almost completely destroyed. The Time Terrors have ripped the palace apart, and it lies in some strange limbo, poised on the edge of a black hole. She finds the Chromozoa from the present close to death. All the other Chromozoa have been destroyed. The dragon has won. He had taken the spellstone from the past, which stopped the planet from being saved. The Chromozoa then tells of the last battle at Warlock Mountain, where Saber was killed by the dragon. As he dies, Crystal asked, "What has become of her?" But he gasped his last breath before he could reply. Together with Kite, they head back to the past. Here, Crystal finds herself at the time just before the Great War had begun. The Chromozoa of this period are very nasty people. Crystal must not be detected and must steal the spellstone for herself before one of the dragon's spies does it. She also discovers that the story told to her by the Chromozoa is not exactly true. It was the Chromozoa that started the Great War, not the dragons. What? The Chromozoa wanted the dragons dead, so the Untitled Chapter would allow only them to rule the universe. On returning to the present, Crystal finds herself in a predicament. Now she knows the truth. Should she help the Chromozoa? But if she does not, then Saber is going to die. 3 exclamation marks. We are way past double dash territory. Yeah. The lone Chromozoa admits they were wrong and insists that they have changed. They have realized that all the Majestic 8 races need to live together. She believes him and quickly heads to the Desert Forest Point Temple. With her last spellstone, she can shut it down. Just as she places the spellstone inside the temple, General Scales appears in a blind rage. The temple begins to shut down, but he will not stop until Crystal is dead. Outside, the King Earthwalker and his soldiers are attempting to get into the temple to save Crystal, but they are too late. She must defeat him alone. After a long-fought battle, what? Crystal finally destroys General Scale. He doesn't just, have the vapors and fall over on his fainting couch? It's nonsense. That's not the General Scales I know. Hashtag not my General Scales. Yeah. The King Earthwalker eventually breaks through to help, but his timing isn't very good. He tells Crystal to remove Scales' belt. This is technology given to him by the dragon, but as she does, it changes to stone. He tells her to give it to Saber, who must take it to the mutant leader in Willow Grove. He's an alchemist and may be able to help. Jesus Christ. Mighty Chromozoa God. What the hell, Steve? I mean, look, I did know some of this. Because the initial leak, I went to a mirror site. I went to Rare Thief, and I boned up on the rough outline of the plot, which a lot of this syncs up with. Right. But the time travel elements kind of throw me for
time heist,
time loop here, the description of the future Chromozoa Palace, right? Where it's teetering on a black hole and it's a strange limbo. What that reminded me of, I don't know if you ever played the Ghostbusters video game from 2009. That was kind of
I heard about it, but never.
It was kind of like a canonical Ghostbusters 3 written by Harold Ramis and Dan Aykroyd. And part of the elements of that game is you actually cross over into the ghost dimension, which is kind of similar to our dimension, but kind of skewed. You know how when you approach areas in Banjo-Kazooie or Ukulele in the hub, but they're they're at the entrances to the worlds, and those worlds are kind of starting to bleed through into the hub. That's kind of like what's in this realm where you're in the New York Public Library, but it's in the ghost dimension, so you're it's floating in limbo, and there's black holes, and that's what it reminds me of. But right. Anyway, long story short, this is nuts. This is so convoluted at this point, and I'm sure part of that notion is just reading it in a text document. Were I to play it naturally and it be slowly, unraveled in front of me, maybe it would be more digestible. But as it stands, holy hell. And I knew the twist about the Chromozoa, being the instigators, from the document on Rare Thief, but just a lot to process.
Okay, so should I get into what we've found?
Please.
In terms of this act? Okay,
please.
cool. So, yeah, going back to Cape Claw, and that is one of the things I really love about Cape Claw. I like the idea of coming back to an area that you think you've cleared and discovering more about it and more unlocking and diving deeper. I really like that.
It's called Stop and
Banjo,
Swap. Yes.
yeah, I was going to say Banjo-Tooie actually did that to an extent with some of the areas with backtracking, but not to the extent that this was. This was an entire area that, slowly opened up to you over time. It became really like literally the first area that you explore on Crystal's side of things to rescue Kite, and you think you're finished with it, and it just more opens up and more and more and more, and it becomes this really pivotal location. So it's the familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. So you go into the mouth of the Chrozoa, which you do in Star Fox Adventures as well to get to Ocean Force Point, right? So that kind of echoes into Star Fox Adventures, but here you're meant to meet with another dinosaur. We don't know what it's supposed to be, but he's supposed to basically give you the hint that you're supposed to travel around these caves. So you go through the caves, you find the translator object, and you unlock in the bottom of the mouth, there's another Chrozoa shrine. And it's weird too, because the way that it looks like you're supposed to be able to like drain Cape Claw or something like that, because there's a path under the water that looks like you're supposed to be able to travel on it, and the only way you could do that would be by draining the water. But anyway, you take that Chrozoa shrine into the it's not a Chrozoa shrine, sorry, it's a teleport to Chrozoa Palace. And the problem with that, we have Chrozoa Palace, it's there, we can fully explore what is Chrozoa Palace. It's kind of weird. I'll explain it. So it's kind of like I don't even know where to begin. I just discovered that it's so alien and abstract, it's hard to even describe. But there's basically this really, really, really futuristic like tunnels, kind of like a Ridley Scott thing going on, with like Alien.
Yeah.
So it's got that thing going on, but like there's a lot of light shining through. So it's almost like a bioluminescence kind of thing. So tangled metal, if you want to think about it that way, with like light pouring through. But then you get to an elevator on the opposite side of the room, which takes you up to this big chamber, and it's like there I am having issues again. You're basically in this big room, right? And it's blue flooring with giant windows on one side pouring through with light, a giant ocean that just stretches as far as you can see. It's this really peaceful, serene kind of environment. And you're supposed to have your interaction there with like the Chrozoa and everything like that. The cool thing is they actually used that same graphical trick they did with Banjo-Tooie's mirrors. When you go to like Runny Industries, you can look in the mirror, and the way they did that was basically by cloning the room over again.
Uh-huh.
So they did that, but they did it with the floor. So the floor looks really polished, because you can see your own reflection in it and stuff. So they did that there. The disappointing thing is that is the only version of Chrozoa Palace we have. We know that there's supposed to be a future and a past that you travel into, but as far as we know, there's only one Chrozoa Palace. It's that one state, and that's it. So we're going to have to do a lot of work to try and get that working. But it is there, and it's a different Chrozoa Palace than we're used to in Star Fox Adventures. Somebody actually commented on your Twitter post advertising this podcast that, he's a Chrozoa Palace, which is what your, Cloudrunner tells you when you arrive there. And it is funny that they call that Chrozoa Palace when in actuality that it would be Warlock Mountain in our version. So they're two different places that they went, you know what, let's scratch off Warlock Mountain as what Crystal's visiting, and we'll call that Chrozoa Palace, so that was just one of the changes they made there.
And it's funny because, Chrozoa Palace in Star Fox Adventures is such an iconic locale. And it feels weird and alien and ancient and like unsettling. So I can't even imagine what this even more alien and unsettling and upsetting version of Chrozoa Palace would actually be. It's like, how do you get more just skeevy than the Chrozoa Palace we know?
Oh, and two, I should mention as well, yes, you do get to have a fight with General Scales here, but us trying to get that fight working is its own set of issues. We haven't quite gotten there yet, but what we have gotten is the cutscene afterwards. I think what ends up happening is Crystal goes for General Scales' belt in the midst of the battle, and that teleports them away. Because what happens next, we have a cutscene that opens with General Scales and Crystal suspended in the air like 70 feet above Golden Plains. So immediately there's nothing, underneath them. So they start screaming and falling. And as they fall toward the earth, there's a pond next to a rock. Crystal falls into the water completely unharmed. General Scales lands on his back on the rock and then slides off of it. So that's when you get to take the belt off him, because he's on the ground writhing in pain. And Gratabug, instead of the Earthwalker King, because like I said before, they swap some of the characters sometimes, he tells you, oh, you take the belt and give it to Saber, kind of thing. So that's where that whole narrative fits into it.
Funny that there's this whole thing just about the belt, that in Star Fox Adventures, he just has a belt that makes him teleport, and that's it. There's nothing to it, and you're not supposed to think about it. He just has a teleportation belt. Deal with it. This is in the Lilat system. Eat me, like that's, and it's just funny here. There's all this lore upon lore upon lore, and everything has a purpose and explanation, and it's wild. It's wild, man.
And barring one or two events, most of this did appear in the game. So they definitely had that vision and recreated it in the game, which is really good to see. There is a few parts where it's like, they didn't quite get there, or they decided to change it. But for the most part, this all exists in the build, like that's just crazy to consider.
Yeah. All right. So we're approaching the end game. I guess we already have reached the end game when they did a time heist, but
there you go.
Yeah.
Avengers totally.
Saber Act 6. Saber takes the belt, and with the help of Mutant Leader, it is brought back to life. This allows Saber to safely enter Dragon Rock without mutating himself. Now that General Scales is dead, the Sharp Claws are completely disheartened. Aww, dear leader is dead. They stand idly by and let you enter Dragon Rock without any hassle. Dragon Rock is a huge empty plain. Standing in the center is a towering rock, underneath which is said to lie the body of the ancient dragon which Dracor is attempting to revive. It seems that the ancient dragons had huge destructive powers that the current dragon's evolution has removed. By using the magic energy from the planet, Dracor attempts to revive the ancient dragon. With its powers, he will be able to destroy the Chromozoa and finally take over the universe. To get inside the rock, Saber and Tricky must first get past Dracor's defenses. To do this, they must rescue an Earthwalker and ride on its back to smash down barricades. I recognize that.
There you go. I was going to say there's a lot of echoes here that you're going to go, finally, ground.
Then by rescuing the Cloud Runner that helped Crystal to defeat the Galleon, she must take out the laser searchlights. Finally, they must rescue a high top and protect it as it carries giant rocks to at least open the entrance to the rock. Whew, yeah, this is all very comforting. Inside, Saber discovers that all that remains of this great Chimeria dragon is its heart. The heart is connected up the huge tubes, like the internet, pumping it full of pure magic energy. Within the heart lies the Spellstone. Saber battles and defeats the heart and gains the Spellstone. As he is about to leave with the stone, Dracor appears. Saber must quickly escape from within the rock before he is trapped there forever. Saber and Tricky return to the mutant, who reveals himself to be a Spellstone Guardian. With the final Spellstone activated, Saber returns to the Volcano Force Point and places it within. The magic energy extraction has finally been stopped, and with the heart destroyed, Dracor's plan is defeated. However, he is still alive, and until all the spirits are placed, the vision that Crystal saw in the palace may still come true. So this is more of you can easily see a one-to-one, like what they did, how they implemented this into Star Fox Adventures. A lot of this plays out the same.
Yeah.
And of course, it's worth pointing out that Dracor is in Star Fox Adventures, but he is just a genetic mutation creation created by the Sharpclaw.
Yeah, and it's just an on-rail section that is, leads to his demise there.
Yeah. Dracor really get shafted. We talk about General Scales, but General Scales still had a very prominent part of the lore, the story of Star Fox Adventures. Dracor was reduced to nothing. Like there is no mythology behind the character as he appears in Star Fox Adventures.
So do you remember when I said that Blackwater Canyon, it seemed like all the devs left that area to work on something else?
Yeah.
I think they were working on this, because this is pretty much all in the game.
Yeah.
Like you can totally get through the entire underground passage. You can do all the flying stuff. There is, obviously we have our programmers and everybody really chipping in and really trying to make it work. But for the most part, they haven't had to do too much custom stuff in terms of restoring it. Most of the stuff is in the game already, and they're just trying to make it functional again. So this area is completely doable if you were to somehow sequence break and get up to this point. So when, the whole restoration community comes together and does this, Dragon Rock, they're going to be like, we only have to fix this and this and this, and then it's done, So that is at least, kind of comforting. The Chimeria Dragon Heart is really cool. Basically, it's this, in the center of the room, there's this giant heart, obviously, but it's got like a dragon head sticking out the middle of it. And you have to like open the chambers of this kind of metal surrounding it to be able to fight the dragon by blasting it. And it's really cool because the same animation that was used in Conker's Bad Fur Day on the mucus of you know what I'm talking about? Unga Bunga, the area there where it kind of flows and it's like really, it has the same thing with that. And when you defeat the dragon and it dies, it like melts, really kind of gory and like goopy looking, and it uses almost that same animation technique.
The Conquer goop, it appears a couple times. It's just even like I think the poo at various points. Yeah. And it's cool because there's actually I think 2 models, or at least they're modifying the polygons on its face. It really looks gory and melting. Like this would have got it a T rating for sure. Just like looking at it in the game, it's really cool looking. But so after you defeat it, you have Dracor appearing. We actually have that cutscene still in the game of him kind of threatening Saber and stuff. And he ends up escaping to that. And then we swap over to Crystal again. So yeah, that whole thing is pretty well in the game. The Chimeria Heart's there. The Dragon Rock section's there. The confrontation with Dracor is there. It's all there. Wow. Well, Crystal Act 7, you ready?
Yep.
By placing the final spellstone, the Chromozoa shrine within Golden Plains rises out from the sand. Crystal and Kite quickly head back and collect their final spirit. As they return to Swapstone Circle, Kite bids her goodbye. She must return to Cloudrunner Fortress and assume her late mother's role as queen. During her adventure with Crystal, she has learned what it is to become a leader of her race. Crystal returns to Warlock Mountain. She discovers that Randorn is dying. Just die already. God, you've been dying the entire game. If they do not help him soon by planting moon seeds in special locations, sure, why not? He will not survive. Crystal places the final spirit at the top of Warlock Mountain. This causes what she thought were the stone statues of the Chromozoa to come to life. By placing the 7th spirit, the Chromozoa begin the alignment of the majestic 8 planets. This will bring about an age of peace in the universe, and allow the Chromozoa to finally emerge from their deep sleep. This is the dawning of the Age of Aquarius. Age of Aquarius. That's a song for you boomers out there. But Saber must be quick. The 8th and final spirit must be brought back to Warlock Mountain within a set time limit. If it isn't, then the alignment will not be complete. The Chromozoa will have to remain in their slumber, and the dragon will live to fight again. Oh my. So, it's funny, because I brought up the fact that the weird chain of events that led to Dinosaur Planet becoming Star Fox Adventures, and then Rare and Nintendo to kind of cease their partnership, ultimately led to Namco developing what is essentially a soft sequel to some of the mythology laid down by Rare. And so this whole thing about Kite having to assume her late mother's role. The Queen Cloudrunner does not die in Star Fox Adventures. And Kite arguably only appears at the beginning of the game in the cage, and it's never established that she is the princess of the Cloudrunners. It's just she's just there on a galleon. It's almost like a dev cameo of an earlier character of importance. But it's tricky who has this character arc in Star Fox Assault, because when the Aporoids attack Saria, his parents die, and he has to assume the mantle of King of the Earthwalkers there. So it's just interesting. That wasn't even, like, done by Rare. That was Namco who took that baton. But it syncs up very well with the original plans for Kite. Just find that interesting, Steve. I just find it interesting, that's all. I just wanted to say it.
Well, there's two things about that. I think whenever you have a story that involves royalty, especially a prince, if you're going to do sequels, they're going to raise through royalty. I think that's just a trope.
Yeah.
You know, like it's good that they did that, but I think that speaks less to like, oh, Namco's really sussing out Rare and their plans. No, it's the natural conclusion.
Well, that, but it's also just, I don't know. The universe finds a way. It's self-healing sometimes, you know. So if this was the way things were supposed to play out, we kind of got there the long way around. But
I also have to say, I'm surprised this is only our second Jurassic Park reference in a game all about dinosaurs. Like, there should have been so many more made.
Yeah.
Oh, and before we continue, too, I got to say, you insulted the boomers for not knowing Age of Aquarius. Age of Aquarius came out in 1967. That is a boomer song.
No, I was saying that's for you boomers out there.
Oh,
I was saying
okay.
I was alienating the people who actually listen to the conversation.
Ah.
Yeah.
We would never do that.
No. Usually it's Jeff who I lay thick with the boomer references, because he and I both love that period of music, even if we're tired of the people from that generation holding us back. Hi, Joe Manchin. But, awesome music from the late 60s.
Okay, so with Golden Plains and stuff, that temple rising out of the sand, that is in the game. We know how to make that work. We know all the code and stuff. We just have to legitimately get there at that stage in the game for everything to work out. But that does take you to the next Chromozoa shrine, which is the test of knowledge. And that's in Star Fox Adventures. It's the exact same test. It's where you have to take the objects and the associated locations and place them in front. Basically, it's like the Furnace Fun version, right? Like, this is familiar. Where does it go? There's that whole thing. But in Star Fox Adventures, and you might have seen my tweeting on it about a year ago now, actually, exploring that room where they have the almost dioramas, like the picture frames. And it looks like it's a really deep canvas.
I thought you were going to say diarrhea, but I was like, because we were just talking about conquer and poop, so now...
That is true. That is true.
On the brain.
Yeah. But do you remember that post at all?
No.
Okay. So
I missed it. I missed it.
Dinosaur Planet with this test, it's actually really cool, because I think in Star Fox Adventures they kind of have that liquefy effect they try and do, and you can see the area through it. With Dinosaur Planet, it's pictures, so it's these canvases on the wall. So there's 3 canvases on each side, so 6 in total, and there's objects in the center of the room. So as you look at these, trying to think of how like an analogy to use, but basically there's a canvas on the wall and it shows a scene from the game, but it's all modeled in 3D. It's not a 2D image, it's 3D. And you can actually jump into the frame and kind of walk into it. And your character model actually shrinks as you do that. So it almost is this like, really cool illusion of going deeper into the canvas, like kind of these interactive paintings. And I think you were supposed to do that. So basically you pick up the object, you walk over, you go into the painting, and then you drop it down and then come back out again. And for the longest time, we were trying to make that work, and it just kept crashing. And even solving the challenge wouldn't work because it would teleport you somewhere else where it wasn't supposed to. We had, again, one of our really clever programmers look into that, and he's like, fixed it. You just change this value to this value. It'll boot you right back into where you're supposed to go. It's like, oh, okay, it's all been solved. But like that was one of the rooms that gave us a bit of trouble at the start that we've completely solved now. But yeah, that's the test of knowledge. It's appeared in Star Fox Adventures. It's cooler in this one, I gotta say, because that like portrait thing. But same idea. It's like these are the objects that you're familiar with. Find an association, put them there, and that will give you the whole test of knowledge thing. So yeah, that solves Crystal's last challenge there, and then the rest is just Warlock Mountain stuff, where it's like it almost feels like the tribals from Jet Force Gemini, where they're kind of padding it out, where it's like, okay, well, there's something, and as you said, why won't you die for the Randorn there? But yeah, like basically there's two, I think it alludes to it in here actually, where it talks about him dying and it's okay. They mentioned it after.
Randorn reminds me of Aunt May from the Spider-Man comics, where she's always on death's door. Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, and it's one of those, again, short acts that's very cutscene heavy, because after you're placing it at the end, you'd get that. Oh, and I should mention too, basically the way that Chromozoa Palace, basically the Star Fox Adventures version of Chromozoa Palace being Warlock Mountain, the way that it works is as you complete each spirit drop off, it creates a pathway that leads up to the roof. And the reason that Randorn isn't able to communicate with Saber is because they're both on opposite sides of the room, right? So there's no way to connect those two areas together. So even though you're dropping off spirits in the same pit-like area, Saber is stuck on the eastern side and Crystal is stuck on the western side. So Randorn is on the western side with Crystal and there's nothing there with Saber. So in order to reunite them, they have to complete that kind of stairway upward onto the roof. And that's ultimately where you end up connecting.
I thought they were going to have to tear down the wall and then David Hasselhoff will climb on top and rock it out.
I mean, that was the original plan. It is mentioned later in the text document, so we will get there. So,
yeah, Hasselhoff, of course, the first H capitalized, the second H capitalized. Yeah. That would how exactly. That's how you present it in Dinosaur Planet. Okay, so
Hassel tribe.
Where are we at? Are we at Saber Act? Oh, we're at the end. The Saber Act.
This is the last. Yep.
Yep. Okay. Saber must find the last Chromozoa shrine. The Swapstone tells him to seek the guardian of the Snowhorn tribe back in Northern Waste, where his adventure began. What? He discovers the shrine, but must complete the final challenge, the Test of Sacrifice. By doing this, Saber proves that he is willing to put his own life before that of a dinosaur, and thus is worthy of the final spirit. I think they mean put a dinosaur before his own life, because it makes it sound. Yeah, it makes it sound like he's going to kill a dinosaur to save himself.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. But I know what it means. I know what it means. Before Saber returns to Warlock Mountain, Tricky leaves him to return to his family. This is something that Saber must do alone. If all goes well, Saber, Crystal, and Randorn will soon be heading straight back to their own planet. No detours here. He quickly makes his way back to the top of Warlock Mountain and arrives just in time. If Saber and Crystal did not plant the moon seeds to save Randorn, then Randorn will die at this point. Bye, Randorn. But if they did, then he is brought back to health and has a special surprise for them. I hope it's ice cream. As Saber is about to place the final spirit to complete the alignment, the dragon swoops down and grabs him. Dracor is furious and, using his powers, pulls the spirit from Saber's body and into his own. The Chromozoa attempt to intervene and begin firing at Dracor and Saber. Crystal shouts for them to stop, but it's too late, and they are both knocked down through Warlock Mountain and into the core of the planet. It was here where Crystal had seen the vision of Saber being killed. It is now up to Saber to defeat the dragon and save the planet. Will Saber do it? What happens if he fails? What happens if he succeeds? Will they find a communication chamber and return to their own world? Will the Chromozoa really change for good? Or is this all part of their plan? Why were they so keen on killing Dracor when Saber was in the line of fire? And who is really telling the truth? You'll have to play the game to find out. Same bat time, same bat channel. I added that part because that's what it sounded like. But that's They don't provide firm answers here.
Mm-hmm.
And they throw it up into the air. Or into the core of the planet in this version of events.
So let's get into the test of sacrifice, and then we'll move on to Dracor. So
yeah,
funny enough, the test of sacrifice, I think, given the reaction of the channel, I think I was the first person to actually get this working, because within the maps of the game, basically all the Chromozoa tests are right next to each other. So if you levitate out of one, you can drop into another one. So it was either the day that they came out with levitation, or at least maybe a week after or so. But I was kind of just cruising around the levels, and everybody, when they tried to get into the test of sacrifice, the game would just crash. And finally, I managed to get it where I could land in it. And for one of the times that I tried it, the game did not crash, but I failed the challenge immediately because it went, oh, he didn't do what he's expected to do. We'll fail him for it. But after that happened, the game went, where's Steve right now? Oh, he's in the test of sacrifice. What just happened to him? He died. Oh, well, restart him in the test of sacrifice. That's what we'll do. So all of a sudden I'm back at the start, and it goes, go, do the test of sacrifice. And I'm like, oh my God. So immediately I start recording my screen and just sharing it with Discord, and they're going nuts because this is like an unseen test from, Dinosaur Planet that was never made in Star Fox Adventures. So I'll take you through a walkthrough. You basically pop in and you hear Tricky whining from far ahead. You run into the room and you see there's this like the mirror. You know how like each Chromozoa test in Star Fox Adventures has that like rippling mirror in the center?
Sure.
Like it's on the wall there. It's destroyed. And there's lava that's creeping out of it, like on the floor, going toward Tricky. And around it, there's a whole bunch of like half ruined pillars. And what you have to do is you have to run up to a pillar and push it to try and get it in the way to block the lava flow. And it will for a time, but eventually the lava starts eating away at that rock pillar and it explodes. So you have to do the next one and then the next one. And when you arrive at the third pillar, you notice there's a little plinth for a sword, kind of like the Master Sword, like from Ocarina of Time at the top. So when you push the final pillar into place and it gets destroyed by lava, this plinth drops down. And you take your sword and you push it inside, and lightning shoots out this huge dramatic scene, and that's how you pass the challenge. Tricky then teleports away and you get the thing. And if you're not able to do that in time, Tricky whines, teleports away, you fail the challenge. So that's how the test of sacrifice is meant to work. You're meant to sacrifice yourself to save Tricky. And by doing that, you prove to the Chromozoa that you're worthy of their spirit, and that's how you get that. So that's where the whole test of sacrifice fits in as the final thing in the Northern Waste, which is interesting because you have to, start your mission over, basically. You started in the Northern Waste, now you're ending it in Northern Wastes. So you take that spirit back to Volcano Force Point Temple, Warlock Mountain, rather, and you provide it to the Chromozoa, and you think the game's going to end there at that point because you're like, oh, this is the final one, I can do it. The cutscene that we're supposed to enable, that we're trying to get working, is Dracor just bursting out of the ceiling right when Saber and Crystal are about to meet, because they've now bridged that connection there. They've now made it, like where they can explore each other's worlds. Saber can now get to Randorn, it's all cool. And they actually make reference to that too, going, if Saber and Crystal did not plant the moon seeds to save Randorn, then Randorn will die at this point. If they did, he is brought back to health and has a special surprise for them. So we don't know what the special surprise is exactly, but it shows that point of like, hey, if you're a completionist, you get to see the secret ending. But if not, it's all for naught kind of thing. You got a bad ending and you'll have to try again or whatever.
Randorn gives you the sandcastle codes for Banjo-Kazooie.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into Stop and Swap for sure. But yeah, so he bursts out and then you're immediately thrown into battle with him. And we have got that battle working. We haven't found a way to like properly beat it and have it, show us the end of the game as like a cutscene. Yeah. So that's where we're stuck on that one specifically there. But we know that the final battle is programmed in the game. We know we can reach it at some point, but more investigation will be needed there.
Wow. Well, I'm gobsmacked, Steve. Gobsmacked. I don't... Yeah. This is a lot. And it's also interesting to me that the end of the game, the final battle, inverse. Instead of going up into the atmosphere, into orbit.
Ooh. Actually, It takes place on an asteroid. You're
Oh.
teleported away, and you're on an asteroid firing at Dracor as there's like swirling meteorites kind of around.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it does still have that spacey thing. Maybe that's what Miyamoto saw and he went, hey.
So
you know
yeah,
who would fit in this game.
yeah, because obviously, yeah, that final battle with Andros, which is kind of a play on the final battle in Star Fox 64 and Star Fox for the Super Nintendo, but with the back of Andros's head being the Chromozoa mask, the Chromozoa head, and then Falco shows up, and but yeah, it's. I don't know where do you want to take this as we start wrapping things up here, Steve?
Let me just satisfy the stop and swap stuff first, because it's going
Sure.
to be a very quick point. We've looked through, we've combed through, we haven't yet found anything stop and swap related, which you'd think there would be, because it's one of the kind of early era N64 games that might have it. And true to fact, there might be an earlier Dinosaur Planet build than this that could have stop and swap stuff.
Well,
in it,
that's
from
what I was gonna speculate, because if this was a build when they started to make the changeover to Star
Right.
Fox Adventures, at this point, Stop and Swap would have been dead. Like they would know, like we're not allowed to do it. Donkey Kong 64, as far as we're aware, is the last game that has vestiges of it in it, and it was scuttled. We know thanks to Paul Magachek, very very late, relatively.
Yeah.
So it would make sense that there would be no traces. That does not mean that Stop and Swap at one point wasn't intended to work with this game, but we just don't have enough info to go off of at this point.
Exactly. And then that's, we will, maybe Paul Makachek will listen to this one and go, well, jump on it again. 2 days have passed.
Well, I think there's been some arguments about like the games that were actually intended to work with Stop and Swap, because I think Jet Force has been brought into the equation where you're like, well, that doesn't make sense because that predates Donkey Kong 64. That was released before Donkey Kong 64. If Donkey Kong 64 broke Stop and Swap's back, then there should be traces of it in Jet Force. It should actually work in some capacity. So anyway,
so yeah, that's the nail in the coffin there. The build that we currently have, no stop and swap. So far, we might make another stunning discovery, but trust me, we've been looking for keys and eggs. There's nothing.
You know what? That would be apropos, because then you could come back and we could tie every episode you've been on this
third
season.
Stop and swap
episode. and the Dinosaur Planet follow-up as well. Yeah. So, Steve, like, we've been kind of dancing around this all episode long. We now have such a clear picture of what Dinosaur Planet could have been had things gone differently. So many factors would have to go differently, though, for us to get Dinosaur Planet as envisioned, discussed on this episode. A lot of it was, of course, the implementation of the Star Fox IP and having to make allowances for that and changing the lore. Obviously, Animus, Randorn, that doesn't work with Fox McCloud. You can't say Fox McCloud is now Randorn's son when it's established James McCloud. That would just be nonsense. So obviously, a lot of this was already on its way out. But that being said, we might have gotten a more robust Star Fox Adventures : Dinosaur Planet had it not been for the buyout, putting that ticking clock on getting the game out and on the shelves before Rare went off into the sunset with Xbox. So, are you satisfied with the compromises made to get Star Fox Adventures into stores?
So, here's the thing. If you look at Star Fox Adventures as it stands right now, it's sort of a greatest hits of Dinosaur Planet, Yeah. They have, Dragon Rock in there. They put that in there. They got ice mines, There's parts and portions that you're reading of the outline where you've gone, that strikes a memory. I remember this. I remember that. And it's really like, the memories that you have of the game being really, really strong. And then as soon as it veers off a little bit, you go, this is weird and unfamiliar. So it could have been the point where they said, you know what, this stuff doesn't really fit, doesn't really work. We'll scrap it. We'll take the greatest hits of, the stuff that really we feel real strongly about. And they could have put that in. Now, that being said, I still mourn for Cape Claw because there was so much potential there. I love the idea of returning to a familiar location, unlocking further areas of it. And I mean, it was a 3-tiered system, because you've got the original part that you free kite in, you've got this whole unlockable village section, and then you've got these whole underwater cave section. Each has its own, mood and vibe that it brings to it that's unique to that location. And it's a good way to gate progression and to feel that you're actually making progress. You're going, oh, I just unlocked the village. Now I get to go here. Oh, I just unlocked these caves. Like you can feel progression as you're going through it. And the fact that they cut it off at the the poison gas room is such a disservice. It's like, I understand they were really trying to get it out, and you can't develop this game forever. I understand, but it's like, oh, seeing what could have been, is just, I mourn for it for sure.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
I am of two minds because I love Star Fox Adventures. Star Fox Adventures is still my top 10 favorite games of all time. And granted, I mean, I have a very insular view of games, being that all of them are DKU on my top 10 list. But
yeah,
I understand the lament that one would feel losing a lot of this stuff. There's a lot of great stuff in here, and I would have loved to see it. I love the character of Crystal here. I love the agency that she has. I love that she is one half of the protagonist rather than kind of this facilitator to get the plot rolling. And it's a shame you had to lose her like almost completely in Star Fox Adventures. I love the weird mythology here, like the origin story. What would be the origin story of the DKU? Quite frankly, the cosmology behind it. It's the kind of stuff that is heady and trippy, and I dig quite a bit. So that is a shame, but you said Star Fox Adventures is kind of a greatest hits of Dinosaur Planet. I agree, but I also think Star Fox Adventures is just a really good Star Fox game. Like a lot of this I view, and I'm like, that wouldn't work in a Star Fox game. That would kind of destroy Star Fox mythology and the lore, and I understand why they had to lose that. Now, the question is, are we happy that the changeover happened at all? Because, if that doesn't happen, we could have maybe gotten a Dinosaur Planet sequel at some point from Rare. On the Xbox, on a Xbox console,
without the Nintendo.
They could really embrace it as part of their heritage, like they do Banjo and Conquer and Viva Pinata and everything like that, rather than it being in this weird kind of limbo state where Nintendo has the rights to it, but they don't really do anything with it because you just got to remake Star Fox 64 again and again.
Yep.
That being said, I really love Star Fox Assault, and I think Star Fox Assault weirdly works in a lot of ways as a follow-up to Star Fox Adventures, even if it mostly focuses on Fox and Crystal, and only one little bit of the game, brings back the elements from Saria. So it's complicated. I have a complicated series of emotions when it comes to all of this. I think ultimately, at the end of the day, I look at the history of Rare projects that never made it to shelves. I look at your Donkey Kong Racing / Saberman Stampedes, and I think, I would much rather have a game that is full of compromises versus a game that doesn't exist at all and it's just a big what if. So I find all of this interesting. I really do. And it does kind of whet my appetite for the Dinosaur Planet that could have been, that never was. but it's not going to diminish my enjoyment of Star Fox Adventures because I will always be appreciative that we got that at all.
Yeah, that's very true.
It is absolutely a fine game. It is gorgeous. It has one of my favorite David Wise soundtracks, and it made me actually give a damn about the Star Fox characters, which I think was one of Rare's final gifts to Nintendo, was adding a lot of rich tapestry to Star Fox that wasn't quite there before. At least in my opinion. I know a lot of Star Fox fans would disagree, but I don't give a damn. So... You know, it's funny because Rare, when the partnership with Nintendo began, they reinvented Donkey Kong to the point where, you know, Nintendo was still reaping the fruits of those moon seeds. A good 28 years later, we're on the verge of what I call the decade of Donkey Kong, game, theme park, movie. You know, and that's all based on what Rare got started with Donkey Kong Country. And they didn't have that level of success with Star Fox on their way out from Nintendo, but I love it. I love what it did, and it weirdly, like, the melding of the two properties, Dinosaur Planet into Star Fox Adventures, it worked for what it was.
Yeah.
You know, losing the time travel, losing Randoran, losing the duplicitous nature of the Chromozoa, and just subscribing all of that to Andros, that works great. It's funny though to then like look at those bits in Star Fox Adventures and say that never felt quite right. Oh, that's why. That's why. Yeah. Because originally, like the whole like creepy vibe to the Chromozoa, and you weren't really sure if you could trust them or not. That really clears things up. That they were kind of duplicitous. There was a twist. You really didn't know if it was the Chromozoa or the dragons that were the true enemy. So,
and even with like the Lightfoot Village aspect too, like having Kite contextually in there makes more sense than just a random ass, Cloud Runner who wouldn't even know who Fox was at that point because he was with Crystal before that, and just being like, "Hey, here I am. I'll protect you now." It's like, the fuck did you come from? Like there's no,
They did like really play up the sort of hostility between the races in Star Fox Adventures, which I'm not sure if that was present in this build, in this version of Dinosaur Planet. But I think a lot of it was just like, oh, Cloud Runners don't like Lightfoot, Earthwalkers don't like Cloud Runners, everybody hates the Sharp Claw. It's just but yeah, I mean, we could be here all night, Steve, and we could pick apart. Well, I like this bit. I didn't like that bit. That bit was better. That bit was better. Point for Dinosaur Planet. Point for Star Fox Adventures. I mean, it ultimately
just duking them out.
Ultimately, I think it is a sunk cost fallacy to keep doing that because this would be a 7-hour, 8-hour podcast.
Yeah. But that said, though, is there any points where you were reading this where you're like, oh, I would have loved to play that in Star Fox Adventures?
Yeah. I think the whole area with, what was it, Blackwater Canyon?
Mm-hmm.
Blackwater Canyon sounded really cool to me. And though, like the spirit tree and kind of further elaborating on the magical energies of Dinosaur Planet, which Star Fox Adventures never really did. It's just flowing with magical energy. You could make some sort of connect the dots of your own with the DKU and the Kremlin source power, flowing in the Crocodile Core of Donkey Kong Country 2, very similar to the Forest Point temples and the magical energies. But I mean, that's all like next level fan wankery, nerdy bullshit, whereas this just comes right in and say, this is what this is. And the Shadow Hunter tribe, I like the glimpses that there were more dinosaur tribes than we got in Star Fox Adventures.
What the hell's a point back?
I'm never going to turn up my nose to more characters.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm all about characters first and foremost. DK Vine's all about it, so I do regret that maybe that area didn't get in. I know Cape Claw for you is the big loss.
Oh, yeah.
Like Cape Claw as it could have been rather than what we got.
Yeah, for sure. That is the one location above anything else that I'm like, I wish one programmer and one artist had stayed overnight, even if it couldn't be fully implemented in the game, because they had a 3-act structure for Cape Claw. Even if you could just have one, like extended throughout, that would be brilliant. But unfortunately, I understand the limitations at the time. It's like they were probably just completely under the clock and doing crunch, and I totally get that. But Cape Claw is one of those ones I just look at and I'm like, oh, what could have been? This is just beautiful. Is there anything though that you're looking at and you're like, I'm glad that didn't get in to Star Fox Adventures?
Oh wow. I'm gonna say like I don't need there to be another Chromozoa Palace. I like Warlock Mountain, Chromozoa Palace. I like that it was just Chromozoa Palace.
Right.
I liked the whole like we got to go into the past at
time
like,
heist.
the dawn of time, and then we've got to go into this apocalyptic future. That's
Right.
a bit much, and I think I would like it in the context of Dinosaur Planet, but I'm definitely not mourning it. I think the simplified story of Star Fox Adventures, it's funny, Steve. Reading over this, I'm kind of in awe of the labyrinth of a plot, the enormity of Dinosaur Planet. But what really blows me away is how they were able to condense and simplify it and make it work with a completely separate franchise with Star Fox
That's very true,
Adventures.
yeah.
And I mean, I think in a weird way, this makes me appreciate Star Fox Adventures all the more because I see what they were able to salvage from this, what they were able to implement into Star Fox and make it all work and make it as cohesive as it was and make it so you don't even really notice most of it in Star Fox Adventures that it was from this completely different alien property. So,
Right.
I mean, yeah, in a weird way, like, I don't miss a lot of this, but it just makes me love Star Fox Adventures all the more.
Oh, well, that's good.
But
I mean, if you're going to take away, it is good to have that point of view because at the end of the day, like we both equally, like, our involvement in the Sea of Thieves stuff too. We love video games and we love seeing them being made and we love the little touches and stuff like that. So if at the end of this you can go, I mourn for certain aspects, but it does, and it for me as well, it does give me a whole new appreciation for what we got versus what was planned, and you do. Just like Stop and Swap with Paul Makachek, you go, oh, I mourn the potential of that, but I completely understand like the innovation and the genius and all the hard work that you guys were all pitching toward to make this happen.
Exactly.
And like you said too, it is good that we still got a Dinosaur Planet in some form, but it still is very cool to go back and, play this through.
Yeah, I think that's you just hit upon it so perfectly there, and maybe I shouldn't keep talking because I won't be as eloquent as that because we have blown past the 3-hour mark. But
oh, juice.
Yeah, I think it makes me all the more appreciative of the Star Fox Adventures team, all the labors and toiling they did over the last bit of the 1990s into the 2000s, and then like facing down that deadline of, hey, we're leaving Nintendo. Hey, we got to get this out in the GameCube or else it's game over. They did it. They did it so successfully that it is one of my top 10 favorite games of all time. It's a game I will always speak highly of. I will always argue people who give it shit. That GameStop employee who tried to talk me out of reserving it. I hope they're spending this holiday season in a gutter somewhere. But this team, I like seeing what they went through, seeing their original ideas, and seeing how it all kind of, no pun intended, crystallized in Star Fox Adventures. I think it's such deft maneuvering that it only raises my estimation of them, and which was already pretty high to begin with. And yeah, I don't mourn for it. Really much of the stuff that we lost, I just make makes me love the team even more. So
Right.
at the end of the day, I think that's all you can hope for. And, I am, though, really intrigued, Steve, by all of this stuff, and I would love to discuss it with you some more. And I have a radical proposition.
Sure. All right. I'm willing to hear this.
Jeff, in addition to being a DK Vine staffer, he runs a Sea of Thieves blog with our friend Dre. And I don't see any reason why we can't branch out together in our own enterprise. What if we start our own blog about Dinosaur Planet? We could call it, I don't know, Golden Plains blog post?
Oh, there we go. That'll work. Well, I would say for anybody that wishes to go further into it, to definitely check out dinosaurplaid.net, because they are leagues ahead of anything you or I could ever hope of doing together.
You've shattered my self-esteem now, Steve. I was really excited about this idea.
Do we have any phone calls? Did anybody call in?
No.
No, nobody. Oh, that's a shame.
Happy holidays.
This has been a File 2 production.
Que rico.